Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me. As always, to everybody in the live chat right now, if you have questions that you want me to answer or shit you want to talk about with me, please hold on to that until we get to the end of the patron questions. The last few weeks I've been getting, or the last few shows, I guess, I've been getting so many patron questions that portion of the show takes about 6 hours. So so you might have to. I'm going to try to get through it as quickly as I can, though. I'm going to try to get through the patron questions as quickly as I can, while also doing them justice and giving my wonderful patrons who allow me to do all this their just due. So if you're in the live chat and and you're not a patron and you didn't ask a patron question and you want something, you want to ask me something or whatever, just hold tight. I will be with you in a second. Or actually many seconds, but we're going to get there. Okay, so here we go with the questions from my wonderful Patreon patrons, and the first one is from Eric Allen, who says, all right, Steve, my uncle and I were discussing Kirk's eulogy for Spock at the end of Wrath of Khan, and I was going on about how great it is due to Shatner's ham-fisted chewing the scene acting. While my uncle agreed, he also pointed out how incredibly racist those lines at the end are. Of all the souls I've encountered, his was the most human. My uncle, who's from the white side of my family, put it in perspective, saying if someone eulogized John Lewis by saying, of all the souls I've encountered, his was the most white, it would be considered incredibly racist, and rightly so. So that put it in a very new perspective for me. I get what they were trying to do with that scene, but now in this light, it seems to be an utter failure. I think you may have touched on that scene in a past video, I can't remember, but have you recently had any, aha, yes, that was incredibly racist, sexist, whatever moments when you go back and watch or talk about any of the Star Trek shows or movies with friends? Yeah, kind of. I mean, there's another, the other moment like that in the Star Trek movies that I actually noticed. Well, I guess it was probably a couple months ago now, but it's in Star Trek 6. When it's another Kirk and Spock moment. It's when near the end of the movie, before it goes into the big climax in the final act. There's a scene where Kirk and Spock have kind of a conversation in Spock's quarters, and it's a really beautiful scene. And Kirk says to Spock, "You want to know something, Spock? Everybody's human." And Spock raises an eyebrow and says, "I find that remark insulting." Which it's a great line on many levels because it calls back to Spock's sort of ambivalence about his human side and his suspicion and sort of judgmental attitude toward humans and human history, and it also connects to Kirk's eulogy where he is trying to compliment Spock by saying his soul was the most human. And yeah, but you're right. If you look at it, under the terms under which these characters would actually exist if they were real people, yeah, it would be racist for a human to try and compliment a member of another species by saying he of the other species was the finest embodied the best of our species. Like, you're trying to compliment him by saying he was so good, he was more like us than he was like his people. Like, it's not how Kirk meant it, not at all how the scene was written the scene was not written with that intention at all. I think the idea, as you hint at in your question, and I assume this is the way you've always interpreted the scene, Kirk calling Spock the most human soul he's ever encountered, that is because we know that all of the aliens in Star Trek are representative of humans, and so it's not an insult on that level, on sort of a textual, a meta-textual level. But also keep in mind that if you want to try and justify it within the world of the movie and say, well, it's not racist, Kirk saying that, you could come at it from the angle of, well, Spock is half human, and he always was depicted as struggling with his human side, as being at war with it, at never being completely comfortable with it. So maybe Kirk, by saying his soul was the most human soul I have ever encountered in all my travels, that was Kirk's way of saying, you were human too, Spock. You weren't just Vulcan, you were also human. And to me, you always represented the best of whatever the human qualities are. So I think you can justify it in universe if you want. And you can easily justify it, outside of the universe, just in terms of critical analysis, because you can look at what the different alien species in Star Trek represent, and they all represent us, so there's no problem there. But yeah, your uncle has a valid point. Your uncle does have a valid point that it's a little. If that eulogy were given, you're right. If somebody tried to compliment John Lewis by saying, he was his soul was the whitest soul I ever like. That's not cool at all. So your uncle definitely has a point. Carlisle the Cinephile says, hello there, Steve. I know that I usually ask pretty lighthearted questions about nerdy shit or writing advice, but today is one of those few times where I feel the need to ask a more serious question. This will take some explanation in order to provide context, so buckle up, folks. I've known this friend for many, many years. We met back in middle school and have been friends off and on ever since. Note how I said off and on. You see, this particular friend can be extremely rude, selfish, unreliable, careless, and immature. He and I have gotten into several big fights over the years, and he's said and done things that have really hurt. Somehow we always reconcile, though. I could tell more stories, but for the sake of brevity, I'll get to the point. This past weekend, my girlfriend and I went to his wedding in the Twin Cities, and it was, to say the least, a shit show. First of all, he sent out the invitations before the venue was fully booked and didn't bother to give the correct one to most of the other guests. I only got the right one because I texted him to make sure. And the ceremony was terrible. The bride and groom were late to their own damn wedding. Half the guests didn't realize that the time on the invitations was wrong. Literally, no one there looked happy. Everyone either looked bored or miserable. And we were at the venue for too long and delayed another wedding that was supposed to take place there. And my friend was really rude. I know he had a lot on his mind, but he barely spoke to me despite the fact that we hadn't actually seen each other in over a year. He also didn't seem even remotely interested in getting to know my girlfriend. He couldn't even be bothered to remember her name. After the ceremony, we went back to the Airbnb that they were staying at, and apparently there was an issue with the venue, and so he had to leave to fix it, leaving my girlfriend and I sitting on a couch awkwardly. No one else that was there even wanted to give us the time of day, not even the bride. They just went out on a veranda to smoke and chat and didn't even offer for us to join them. Like, she doesn't want to get to know her new husband's quote-unquote best friend? So we were just sitting there on that couch for nearly an hour, bored and feeling really uncomfortable. Eventually, we lied about my girlfriend having been called into work early so we could have an excuse to just go home. Neither of us had a good time at all. Then yesterday, he writes a post about how happy he was and makes sure to thank those who stuck around. After that comment, I was livid and depressed. It felt like such a petty and passive-aggressive jab at me and my girlfriend. From my point of view, he should come to me and talk to me like an adult if he has a problem with me. I know I wasn't exactly truthful about why we left, but still, my point stands. Now I'm wondering why we're still friends, or if we even should be friends anymore. We barely seen each other in years, and he doesn't seem all that interested in maintaining our relationship. But I just don't know. Am I an asshole for thinking these thoughts? Should I try to get past this since we've known each other for so long? Or is he just a toxic person who I don't need in my life? And if that's the case, should I just flat out tell him that we're done? Or just let the friendship fade gradually over time? I'm sorry for rambling so long. I just needed to get this stuff off my chest, and clearly I need some advice. Well, this is one of the few areas that people ask me, when people ask me for personal advice on this show, usually I'm stuck sort of grasping at straws because I don't have, at least I don't feel like I have enough relevant experience to be like, well, here's what you should do. And that's, that's an iffy proposition anyway. But I had a best friend starting about midway through high school, into my mid-20s. We were best friends for about 10 years, maybe a little more than 10 years. And we were inseparable. We were like brothers. I mean, we saw each other every day. I mean, we eventually got an apartment together and lived together for like 4 years, something like that. And, we saw each other through breakups with girlfriends, and we were best buddies. We were best friends. And in the last couple of years of our friendship, gradually, so gradually that you couldn't even really notice it at first. We started to kind of drift apart, and we started to see the world in different ways, and I started to notice things about him that I really didn't like. And I guess maybe he started to notice things about me that he didn't like. And we started to fight more. We started to argue more. We had a couple of really, I mean, just lengthy fights. It never got like physical. We never punched each other, you know, grappled or whatever, but we would argue and yell and cuss at each other. And there was one time where I think, and we worked together too. We worked at the same place for a few years. And I remember there was one incident where he got up in my face at work and was like daring me to do something to him. And he was a much bigger guy than I was physically. Not, he wasn't like taller than me, but like he was just a lot more muscular and a lot. And if we had ever gotten into like a serious fight, he probably could have kicked my ass easily, because I'm really not anything to speak of. And, you know, I'm like, I've never been in a really serious fight. I don't really know how to fight. He would have mopped the floor with me, I'm sure. So it wasn't long after that he told me that he was going to move out of our apartment together, and he left and got his own place. I think he moved in with his sister, and that's when I don't know what happened to him after that. And I moved out and moved back in with my parents for a little bit. And he and I haven't spoken to each other since. And it has now been, I guess, 15 years. I have not spoken to him once in 15 years. I have not seen him. He was my best friend for 10 years. And that friendship just fell apart. So what I'm telling you is sometimes these things happen. It doesn't mean that it was inevitable. It could have been the result of choices that you made. It could have been the result of things, of the kinds of people that you evolved into as you lived your lives. But sometimes these things happen. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. And I mean, obviously, when you look back across the course of your friendship, if you do decide to end your friendship with this person, and by the way, I'm completely on your side in this situation, the wedding and afterwards and having to make up an excuse to leave, like you have every right to be hurt and angry and pissed off, especially the fucking shit about, oh, thanks to the people who stuck around. Like, come on, I'm completely on your side about that. And if that is just the latest example of this pattern of behavior between you and this friend of yours, I would not blame you at all if you just, you could just let it fade away, or you could have a talk and say, look, I think this is it for us. I don't think we're going to be friends anymore. However you want to do it, like, that's fine. It's okay. You don't have to keep people in your life if they're going to just make you miserable, no matter how long you have had them in your life. And it will be difficult. You will mourn the end of that friendship because you've been friends for so long and you have so many miles that you've traveled together. But if you decide that's what's best for you at this point in your life, that's okay. Like, you don't have to feel bad about that. You'll feel bad for the end of the friendship. And you'll need some time to get over that probably. But you shouldn't feel bad for making that choice, because you always have the right to make the best choice for you. And you're not hurting him. You're not, it's not like you're killing him or anything. You're not harming his life at all. You are taking ownership of your life and your happiness and saying, I think I'd be better off without having this person in my life. And there's nothing wrong with that. So if that's what you decide to do, don't feel bad for making that choice. And I hope that helped. And I hope that made sense. Joy A says, hi, Steve. I've never seen a satisfactory explanation on sonic showers, how they work, why they don't harm your inner ear, and why they are supposedly relaxing. Can you give me your assessment and possibly what is the nearest in real life equivalent? Thanks. See, they've never explicitly... I take that back. I think there was one, isn't there, and someone in the chat I'm sure will correct me on this or help me out on this. I know there was an episode of Voyager where I think we see the sonic shower. And I believe that is the only time that we actually see the sonic shower. And it does appear to work through like sound waves or through vibration, not with water. I think I'm correct in that. That it does not involve the use of water at all. And it just, I guess it just sort of vibrates the dirt off of you. I'm pretty sure, I think we see Belana Torres in her sonic shower, I think, in one scene from one episode of Voyager. So that appears to be how it works. As for how does it not harm your inner ear? How do the vibrations not hurt you? I have no idea. It's never been explained. And I mean, I guess the nearest in real life equivalent will be one of those fancy vibrating shower heads, right? I mean, it still uses water, but like it puts some vibes in the water. So it's kind of like a massaging action, but I guess that will be the closest real life equivalent to the sonic shower. But yeah, I think I'm correct in saying that Voyager episode, and I don't know what episode it is. I can't think of the title off the top of my head, and I don't even remember like what else happens in that episode. I don't remember where in the series that scene happens, but I do remember it was like, oh shit, there's the sonic shower, and we never see it again, I don't think. But yeah, that appears to be the deal. That it's like it shakes the dirt right off of you. General Contact Unit Problem Child. For the last several months, Andrew Torres, the main host of the Opening Arguments podcast, has been making the argument that you shouldn't be too hyperbolic when criticizing Biden because hearing that kind of harsh rhetoric might drive people to stay home in November. Even if he's right, he has data that suggests he might be. Do you think that's a reasonable thing to ask of people? Vote blue no matter who is one thing. Ticking a box one day every 4 years isn't very hard. But if someone genuinely thinks Joe Biden is a piece of shit for not supporting stuff like Medicare for all and the Green New Deal, never mind the Tara Reade thing, I feel like you're demanding a hell of a lot by telling them they shouldn't publicly express that thought. Also, if you take this stance to its logical conclusion, I have to wonder if you just have to say it's never okay to insult the Democratic nominee for president. Trump's not unique. I'm sure another right populist will emerge once he goes. Are we just never allowed to get mad at Biden for being a shitty centrist because it might help Tucker Carlson or whoever wins in 2024? And P.S., just so you know, even though this is about one of his podcast co-hosts, this genuinely is not a question I was originally going to ask Thomas. I would not. I think a lot of this rests on how you frame your request to people. I don't think it's productive. I don't think it's helpful. And I don't think it's really fair if you just say, hey, shut up, stop criticizing Biden. Because I feel like that's just way too blunt and way too uncompromising. And it's not likely to work because you're trying to boss people around, and people, they're not going to listen to you. They're going to be like, well, fuck you. I'll criticize Biden if I want, I would prefer to approach it like this. I would prefer to say, first of all, that if someone is critiquing Biden from the left, I probably agree with most, if not all, of what they're saying. I also wish he would support Medicare for all. I also wish that he would support the Green New Deal. I wish he took a little bit of a harder line on police reform. I wish he wouldn't say things like, propose, increasing funding to the police, right? I wish he had answered that question about the border wall that he was asked earlier and would have said, yeah, of course I'm going to tear down the wall, or at least tear down the portions of the wall that were built under Trump. I mean, I wish he was a lot more progressive and a lot further left on a lot of stuff. But I would say to someone who is wanting to criticize Biden in the lead up to this general election, I would say, listen, your points are valid. Let's just assume that their criticisms of Biden are valid. Let's just assume that what they're saying is reasonable. I would say your arguments against him are valid. Your concerns about him are completely legitimate, and I share them. But what are we trying to accomplish between now and this general election? Because if you truly believe that it doesn't make a difference whether Joe Biden or Donald Trump is the president of the United States, or for some reason you think that Trump would be preferable to Biden, if you genuinely believe those things, then we're not going to have any more conversations. Because, at least not about politics. I'm not saying because I find that to be an utterly asinine position. I think it is completely asinine to try and argue seriously that there is no difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, or that that one of those, despite his many, many problems, personally, the Tara Reade allegations, his reluctance to support more progressive policies, all of that. It's ridiculous to me to seriously suggest that he is not infinitely preferable to Donald Trump. Or honestly, let's get real here, most Republicans, if not all Republicans, right? So what are we trying to accomplish? If you do believe that Joe Biden, as flawed, as imperfect of a candidate as he is, would be preferable to Donald Trump, even if it hurts you to admit it because you feel like, Biden could still do long-term damage, or you would prefer to have a more progressive candidate in there to drive things forward, or to push for more substantial reform, or because you fear that Biden, even though he'll get a few things right, he would still act to maintain the status quo in ways that are harmful to a lot of people. Like I sympathize with all of that. But if you believe that Biden, even with all of that, if you believe he would be that much better than Trump, and by the way, I think he'll be a lot more than this much better than Trump. But let's just say your problems with him are so serious and so at the forefront of your opinion of him that you can say like, well, okay, he'd be better than Trump by that much. Okay, then I would ask you to be extremely mindful of the way you talk about Joe Biden and the way that you place him in your political conversations between now and the election. Because, of course, he is fair game for criticism. All politicians are, all politicians should be. And especially if he wins and he becomes the president, we will need people to hold him accountable and to try and push him in directions that maybe he is reluctant to go, so that he can be the best president that he can be, so that he can do more of what we need him to do than he would if just left to his own devices, right? We need that. We cannot silence that. But between now and November, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to hurt Biden? Because if you hurt Biden, you're helping Trump, because there are only two outcomes in November. Between now and November, there are two options: Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And if you think that Biden is that much better, or that much better, or that much better, or however much better you think Biden would be as president, I would just ask that people be extremely mindful of how they are talking about politics, how they are talking about this election, what issues they want to bring up. If they have a platform, or if they're just talking to their friends and family, what do you want people to keep in mind? Do you want people to go to the polls thinking about what a piece of shit Joe Biden is? Or do you want people to go to the polls thinking, you know what? He has a lot of fucking problems. There are a ton of issues with this guy. He is not who I would have picked if it had been up to me, but he is better than the other guy. And he's the only option we have. And we are better off with him in the White House than with Trump in the White House for 4 more years. So I would frame it like that. Don't just tell people, shut up, stop talking shit about Biden. What are you doing? I have that same instinct. There are times when I want to do that too. There are times when people who are further to the left than me, and it's like, I never hear them talking about Trump. I always hear them talking shit about Joe Biden. And I agree with most of what they say about Biden, but I just want to say, what the fuck are you doing? The election's in November. Why the fuck are you wasting time criticizing Joe Biden? He's the nominee. Like, it's not going to be Bernie. It's not going to be Elizabeth Warren. It's not going to be anybody, but it's fucking Biden, okay? It sucks. A lot of us aren't happy about it, but he's the guy. So let's eyes on the fucking prize, okay? So I'm sympathetic to that, but I don't think that would work. None of my leftist friends are going to be like, oh, gee, Steve's right. Like, they're going to think I'm not being fair, or I'm a jerk, or whatever. So try to frame it in more of a, okay, I understand what you're saying about Biden. What are we trying to accomplish between here and November? What is the best result we can hope for between here and November? And how can we help to accomplish that result? So anyway, Adam Lefty Taylor says, a lot of fans suggest the relationship between Kes and Nix was a wasted opportunity that never went anywhere. The same for Kes as an entire character. And when the writers figured that out for themselves, they just killed off Kes instead of doing something with her? Is this something that you think was for the best, or could Kes's character have been salvaged yet instead of just ditched? Well, of course it could have been salvaged. All of the characters on Voyager, all of them, after the pilot episode, could have gone somewhere interesting if they had bothered to write them that way. Every single character on that show had a direction they could have gone throughout the series that was set up in the pilot that could have been an interesting way to go with that character. And Kes is certainly one of those. There were so many different directions you could go with Kes. And some of that they did explore. She was sort of like the babe in the woods. You know, she was out in space, out and exploring the galaxy for the first time after leaving her home for a long time. You had that part of her. You had her being sort of the voice of compassion, you know, the advocate for the doctor when people were treating him like he wasn't a person. She was the one who sort of, you know, pulled the doctor up and said, hey, stand up for yourself, you know, and don't let people talk down to you. And you just because you're a hologram doesn't mean you're not a person, and you're not someone with value. And you have her relationship with Neelix and how she was able to sort of, you know, lean into him at first and then kind of grow, mature, and find that she was able to move on away from him. And you had, you know, their breakup and both of them moving on with their lives, you know, but still being in each other's lives. They dabbled in a lot of that, but they never really developed Kes holistically into a really, really good character. And of course they could have. Of course they could have. I don't know of any character I've ever seen in a series, whether it's a TV show or a comic book or, you know, a film series or whatever, that was so badly damaged that they just had to be killed off. You can always rehabilitate a character. It's fiction. You're making it up. You can always rehabilitate a character. And I don't mean rehabilitate in terms of, you know, take a bad guy and turn him into a good guy. I mean in terms of take a shitty character and make them into a more interesting character. That is always an option. So of course they could have done something more for Kes besides kill her off. Absolutely they could have. They could have done more for all of those characters on that show than they did. Ed Best says, have you considered doing a review on the new YouTube series by Alexander Siddig, Alone Together, on his channel Sid City? I think it's really well done and fascinating. However, I'm not quite finished with it yet. Well, it's not over yet, is it? I haven't watched, I think the last episode I watched was the third episode. Yeah, I haven't watched. I saw the one. I saw the thumbnail for the. I think it's the latest one, the one where Armin Shimmerman is in it with him. But I haven't watched that yet. The last one I saw was the one where it was Nana Visitor guest starred along with Sid and Andy Robinson and Sirach Lofton. I think it's a really neat show. It's probably better to listen to it than to watch it. I mean, I know they're doing it sort of like Zoom calls, but visually there's really, I mean, I think if you have it playing in another window and you're just listening to it, kind of like an audio drama, I think it plays a lot better. But yeah, I think it's really neat. I'm not planning on doing a review on it, but I think it's really neat. It's like it's a treat. I mean, come on, I love Deep Space Nine. It's my favorite Trek show. So of course I love seeing the actors who played these characters sort of reprise them in this way. I think it's fantastic. But no, probably not going to do a review of it. David Colby, be concise, Steve says. You want concise? I'll be fucking concise. Would you rather have a spaceship that has all the powers of Superman or be a human-sized man with all the powers of the USS Enterprise? I would rather be a human-sized man with all the powers of the USS Enterprise, because you know what that would make me? Superman. Because I could fly. I could be incredibly fast. I'd have lasers that would shoot presumably out of my eyes. Where else would you put the phasers on a human being? Don't even open your filthy mouths, your filthy perverted minds. Okay. They would come out of my eyes, all right? I guess, I don't know. Does the Enterprise have super breath? I don't know. And it's probably not bulletproof, but it's pretty damn resistant. No, it has, hey, the Enterprise has shields, just like the post-crisis Superman has an aura that protects his body. So yeah, if you were a human that had all the powers of the Enterprise, you would be Superman. So yeah, of course, that's what I would be. Like, I mean, like, why do I, come on. I want a ship when I could be Superman? Mike says, you are a Starfleet admiral in the year 2880. And Starfleet Command has tasked you with a very dangerous and top secret mission. You will be taking the newest Enterprise on this mission, whatever letter is appropriate for the time, but you will receive no details about the mission until you are underway. Since this mission is so important, Command has granted you permission to recruit your crew from officers from throughout the history of the Federation. As a good leader, you know it's important to have a chronologically diverse crew, so a wide range of perspectives are present. Rules are, you have to pick at least one officer crew member from each Trek show, and you have to have filled out all the basic positions: engineering, command, security, science, tactical, helm, etc. Keeping in mind you don't know if the mission will involve combat, diplomacy, science, or anything else. Who are your crewmates for this dangerous mission? I'm sure someone asked this before, so I thought I'd spin it a little. So I'm an admiral. I'm an admiral, so I need everything below admiral. So the captain, okay, let's see. So the captain would be Cisco, and that's my Deep Space Nine character. The first officer would be Riker, and that's my TNG character. Let me see. The helmsman would be Tom Paris. That's my Voyager character. Let's see. The communications officer would be Hoshi. That's my Enterprise character. I mean, come on. Science officer would be Spock. That'll be my TOS character. Engineering. Chief engineer would be... I got to go with Scotty. That's another TOS character. So I got Scotty for TOS. Although I guess I could cheat and say, oh, this is the Scott. This is this is Scotty from the animated series. Doesn't matter. James Doohan did half the voices on the animated series anyway. Let me see. Tactical. I guess I'd have to do Worf for tactical, so that's another TNG character. Let me see. I need someone from Discovery, and I need someone from Picard. So, well, I could have Picard from Picard. He could be like a diplomat, right? He could be like an ambassador, okay? Because we need diplomacy, as you say. So I have Picard from Picard. And then from Discovery... Paris is the helmsman. Who can I have from Discovery? It's tough. Okay, no, I'm taking Scotty off and I'm making Jet Reno my engineer. So that's my Discovery. So, okay, so it's Captain Cisco, First Officer Riker, Helmsman Paris, Communications Officer Hoshi, Tactical Worf, Engineering Jet Reno, Diplomacy or Ambassador Picard. And I think that's everybody, right? Because... I've seen one episode of Lower Deck, so I have no idea who I'm going to pick from that. And the Strange New World show doesn't actually exist yet. I haven't seen it, so I can't use. So I think I'll go with that. Good question, fun question. Gottfried Wegmuller, I know you are an active YouTube contributor, but do you watch other people's stuff? If yes, do you like Lore Reloaded or Lore Runner? P.S. If you like Star Trek parodies, I have to recommend Major Grin. I used to watch Major Grin's parodies a lot, and some of them are really funny, but I think his general attitude toward the franchise, especially toward the new stuff, is kind of incompatible with mine. Like his evident bitterness toward the new stuff and his inability to enjoy it just doesn't appeal to me. So I don't watch a lot of his. I just don't pay much attention to him anymore. I don't really watch Lore Reloaded. I don't think I've ever watched Lore Runner at all. I've watched a couple of Lore Reloaded's videos, and I used to watch him back. And we know each other a little bit. Like I've been on his older channels, or before he was doing lore videos, when he would do other stuff. I mean, we've interacted a lot, and we've always gotten along. But I don't really watch Lore Reloaded stuff. So, I can't comment on it. But yeah, I mean, I do watch other people's stuff. Actually, in terms of Star Trek, I mean, I think everybody knows I love Jessie Gender. I watch her stuff a lot, and we've collaborated a couple of times. And I try to watch Trek Central's stuff as much as possible. I don't watch, I won't say I watch every single video or every single live stream they do, but I do try to keep up with them because I do think generally it's a good channel. But yeah, I do spend I spend way more time making YouTube videos than I do watching them, but I do watch other channels and other Trek focused channels. Isaiah Taylor, hello Steve. What's your opinion on humans being the only life in the universe? I know this is kind of the opposite assumption, opposed to the cliche the universe is teeming with life, but this question is just important. I discussed this issue with VovaCat17, and he was much more conservative on the issue, stating that not only are we the only life in the universe, but we're the only life with several universes. I guess VovaCat was making a statement for the theorized multiverse concept. For me, I don't agree with VovaCat's intelligent life assessment, mostly because we ourselves don't know what the concept of life is. Maybe the universe is full of life, but our humanity's definition is too narrow that we miss out on what life truly is. The dangerous assumption is that if we are the only intelligence, we could superimpose our will into space, and it also leads to some dangerous hubris on our part. I also saw a report that there could be at least 36 intelligent civilizations out there. Thoughts? Lastly, could our pop cultural interpretation of aliens simply be metaphorical and examine the human condition of the unknown? Well, yeah, as far as the last question, that's exactly what that is. Yes, our pop cultural interpretation of aliens is a reflection of us. Whether we're talking about like actual works of fiction like Star Trek that feature created alien species and alien characters, or whether you're talking about the sort of generic, like popular concept of aliens in general, like, grays and aliens that do abductions and flying saucers and that kind of stuff. Like, yes, that's all a reflection of us. That's all us projecting something, projecting insecurity or fear or optimism or whatever. That's all. That's all our perhaps even unintentional examination of ourselves. Absolutely, that's exactly what that is. I do not think that we are the only form of life in the universe. But when I think about it honestly, I am forced to admit that when you break it down, that's pretty much just an argument from incredulity. I say that I do not think that we are the only form of life in the universe, or the only form of intelligent life in the universe, because I see how vast the universe is, how old the universe is, how much stuff is in the universe, and I just cannot believe that we could possibly be the only intelligent life in all of that. I just cannot believe that. But that is an argument from incredulity. I don't have any evidence that there is life elsewhere in the universe. I have evidence thanks to the discovery of exoplanets, thanks to what we have learned about how stars work, about habitable zones, thanks to various other star systems that we have discovered, and the ways in which we have come to understand our own form of life and what it depends on and what conditions are necessary. Like, I have evidence that life could theoretically exist in other places, but I don't have any evidence that it actually does. We have never discovered extraterrestrial life, so we don't know. So for me to say, I think it's just got to be there because I cannot fathom how it couldn't be, that is an argument from incredulity. And that is a fallacious argument. It feels real to me. And that is genuinely what I believe. Like, I'm not just saying that. I genuinely believe that we are not alone in the universe. But when I think about it, I am forced to admit that belief rests on a fallacious premise. So it could very well be that we are the only ones in the universe. That could easily be the case. But I don't personally believe it. Lynn Kibblemom says, "Hi, Steve. When you do a scripted video, do you use a teleprompter of some sort? I'm only vaguely familiar with the ones used for live events and wondered what the YouTube equivalent is." Yes, I do use a teleprompter. Let me get it. I have it right over here. I'll show it to you. Hang on a second. Sorry, I had it right over there. I actually, I saw your question earlier when I was compiling my notes, and I meant to get this out and have it ready, but I forgot. So anyway, I use a teleprompter. I use this one. It's called the Padcaster, and the way it works is there is a little rig that slides onto the front of your camera lens. This is it because I use a DSLR camera, a Canon EOS 70D, which is a DSLR camera that has a lens that fits on the front of it. And then on the front of the lens, there are threads where you can attach, filters and stuff like that. And there's a ring that comes with the teleprompter that you screw onto the front of your camera lens. And then the teleprompter rig itself slides over that ring and mounts on the front of the camera. And then you take the lens hood off, okay, and you get your smartphone and you download an app, a teleprompter app that comes, they tell you how to find it in the instructions that come with the teleprompter, and you put your smartphone under there. See, there you go. It fits under there, and is held in by the spring. And you and the screen of your smartphone scrolls the text up, and you can read your text while looking straight into the lens, which is what a teleprompter does. And I have used it for almost every scripted video I have done. Oh my, for over a year. I remember. It took a little bit to get used to. But once I got used to reading it, once I got used to the rhythm of it, the only scripted videos that I do now where I don't use that are the Stephen Stuffy videos, because it's not feasible, because the Stephen Stuffy videos are shot with a fourth wall, so you're not looking directly into the camera. You're pretending the camera's not there. The camera is invisible to the characters. So a teleprompter over the camera lens wouldn't do any good. So I don't use the teleprompter for Stephen Stuffy. When I'm on camera for Stephen Stuffy as Steve, I still have to remember my lines. But for every other scripted video where I'm addressing the camera directly, I can write my script, and then I can have my words that I've written for myself right in front of me, just looking in the camera. So it has been a huge time saver. And yeah, that is the teleprompter that I use. Brooklyn says, how do you think Charlie Baker has been handling COVID? At first, he seemed to be answering in a very scientific manner, and cases have been lower. He did what I would have done, but now I'm not so sure anymore, since we have unemployment on par with the Great Depression and no end in sight. Would you have done anything differently than him? And Charlie Baker is the governor of the state of Massachusetts. And I live in Maryland, so I haven't been paying as close attention to what the governor of Massachusetts has been doing. But, I would have done differently than almost anybody did. I would have shut everything down until it was safe. Period. Like, I would have shut everything down until it was safe to reopen things, which is what we should have done, and we didn't do that. And that's why we're, 6 months into this, and we're still having to deal with this, right? That's why things are such a shit show. But I will admit, me doing that, like if I were the governor of some state, in order for me to do that, to just shut everything down and say we're going to stay shut down until it's safe, that would have required more assistance from the federal government than states have gotten. Because in order to shut everything down, and when I say everything, I mean everything except like the most essential workers, right? Like, health workers, obviously, there has to be a way for people to get food and necessities. Like you would need to keep some places open just for necessity. But if you close down everything but the most essential workers, the most essential establishments, until things were safe, you would have to pay people to stay home. Otherwise, you would have to pay people to stay home. You would have to mandate, freezes on rents and mortgage payments and healthcare premiums and all of the bills that people would have to be faced with. You would have to just say, look, we're going to pause all of this, and nobody's paying any bills, and we're going to pay people to stay home. That would have required congressional action. And I don't know if that would have, obviously that didn't happen. So my idea of, well, here's what I would have done, that is predicated on Congress actually acting, or rather, I should say, the United States Senate actually acting responsibly, because there have been, there have been proposals from Democrats in the House and in the Senate that have been close to what I'm talking about here, that haven't really gotten anywhere because they have to, come up with something that will be acceptable to the Republicans that could actually pass the Senate. And that's how we got, a one-time payment of $1,200 like 3 or 4 months ago. And now they're still arguing over whether to do one more of those. So yeah, that's what I mean, in a perfect world, in response to a pandemic like this, that's what I would have done. I would have closed down everything I could have closed down. I would have paid people to stay home, and I would have left it that way until it was safe. So given that was not an option, I don't know, maybe Charlie Baker did the best that he could. I don't know. I mean, things in Maryland have not been as bad as other places. There have been things about our response and Larry Hogan, the governor of Maryland, who is a Republican, his response that I have not liked. But then again, I have to acknowledge that he is dealing with a situation where there are people who cannot afford to not go back to work in the current situation. And he, as the governor of Maryland by himself, does not have the power to do anything about that. Like, that would require congressional action that is not forthcoming. So, I mean, it's easy for me to say, well, here's what I would do, But anyway, yeah, so that's, assuming the resources were there to do that, that's what I would do, shut everything down. Some random geek says, Steve, on the last patron hangout, where yes, a couple of times I bit my lip instead of talking about my politics because it would cause a conversation, while other times I didn't and say what I wanted to say, but you said how great it is that now Medicare for All is a legitimate talking point by 2020, and yet the Democratic National Committee voted against putting Medicare for All on its official party platform, 36 yes, 125 no, with 3 abstaining. That is way more than a gap for when the same committee on the same day voted against legalizing cannabis as an official party platform, 50 to 106. Is the Democrats truly an oppositional party to the Republicans? I thought that Medicare for All is a popular policy, and we're in the middle of a pandemic. So if the Democrats are not going to have Medicare for All as an official platform, how long until that happens? The people clearly want it, but our representatives don't. Aren't they supposed to represent us? Or do they not care about us so long as just enough of us, or they don't care about us so long as just enough of us vote them into power? And how long before we get food stamps for all, guaranteed housing for all, debt forgiveness, free higher education, a universal basic income? How long until our lives are no longer a commodity for a capitalist or the capitalist system to profit off of? Until then, how many unnecessary deaths will happen due to lack of health care, food, water, and housing? It's almost like we are at war, and lots of blood is on a lot of people's hands because of complacency as well as action and inaction. I think we should take this war back to them, don't you? 25 million are losing their unemployment benefits as the Senate calls for a recess with no solutions. Eviction protections are ending, with the election 3 months away and inauguration not until January. Plenty of time for awful shit and suffering to happen. Voting isn't fast enough. No, voting is not fast enough. I mean, I've been thinking a lot since he passed away about John Lewis, and John Lewis, of course, was a major advocate for voting and arguably expanding the voting franchise and guaranteeing the ability to freely exercise that franchise was the defining issue of his life. But even John Lewis would say that voting by itself is not enough. That's why he recommended that people get into good trouble. Like, he knew that there were times when it's not enough to just show up on election day every 2 years or every 4 years and vote. That sometimes you do have to go out on the streets. Sometimes you do have to make a nuisance of yourself. You have to, go to your representative's office and refuse to leave. And, if it comes to that, like, force the police to arrest you, force the government to get you out of there because you refuse to leave until you have made your point, until you have gotten somebody's attention. And obviously John Lewis did that throughout his life, in addition to encouraging people to vote. So no, voting is not enough. No, of course voting is not enough. But, and of course we should be demanding that the Democratic Party do more and go further than it is doing. Medicare for All is not going to be in the official platform this time around. And that is disappointing because I think it should be there too. I think it's ridiculous that we're still, even debating whether or not we should have universal health care in this country when the rest of the industrialized world has had it. Most of the rest of the industrialized world has had it for a long time. And it's just ridiculous to me that the United States, we're still, we love to blow smoke up our own ass and say we're the greatest nation in the world. But for some reason, we just can't get our heads around we could have universal health care for all of our people. So yes, I'm a big supporter of, I wish that the Democrats would fully embrace Medicare for all. I wish that the Democrats would fully embrace universal income. I would love a universal basic income. I would love that. But I noticed that both of those issues, especially Medicare for all, are a lot closer to being mainstream positions in the Democratic Party than they were last time around. I mean, yes, progress is not happening fast enough. Yes, the party is not being as progressive as I think it should be, as I would like it to be. But they are moving in the right direction. Slowly, haltingly, reluctantly in many cases, but they are moving in the right direction. Medicare for all is actually something that, and that's what I said in the Patron Hangout. I think we even noted that, yes, it was not actually adopted as part of the platform, but it is being treated as a serious issue. Bernie Sanders was not the only kook up on that stage during those debates saying, Medicare for all. Like there were 3 or 4 candidates, including some that at one point or another during the campaign seemed like they might have a legitimate shot at getting the nomination. And not just Bernie, but Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, until she changed her mind and decided that she wasn't for it after all, but or wasn't for a full version of it. But there were multiple candidates on that stage who said, this is what I think we should do. And were willing to put their face and their name behind it and say Medicare for all, or say Green New Deal. Like that is progress. That gives me hope. Is it enough progress? No. Do we need to keep pushing them? God, yes. Do we need to do more than show up on election day every couple years and vote? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. But do I think that the Democrats are not any different than the Republicans, or are they not the opposition party or whatever? No, I don't think that at all. I wish they were more steadfast and determined in their opposition. I wish they were more forward-looking. I wish they were more willing to take chances and, to go for it a lot more than they are. I wish that they were willing to set big goals and ask their supporters to come along with them. I wish there was a Democratic policy equivalent of a John Kennedy, moon landing speech, where some leader in the Democratic Party who could get the establishment behind them enough to actually make this feasible would come out and say, here's what we're going to do, and set a goal and say, by this year, we're going to be this far towards it, and we're going to have universal health care, and we're going to reform the economy and have a Green New Deal, and we're going to end private prisons, and we're going to reform the criminal justice system, and we're going to end homelessness, and we're going to do something about wealth inequality, and we're going to raise wages and raise the minimum wage. And I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that the Democratic Party should be doing that they're just not doing. And I wish that they would say, instead of saying, well, it's too big, well, that's just pie in the sky, we can't do that. Instead of I hate when Democrats say, here's what we can't do. I want Democrats to come out and say, here's what we need to do, and God damn it, we're going to do it. John Kennedy didn't come out and say, well, I'd love to go to the moon at some point, but I just don't know. It seems kind of impossible. We better just not waste time. He came out and said, we're going to the moon. That's the way it is. I'm going on TV. I'm going into the well of Congress with cameras and microphones all around, and I am saying, I'm making this commitment. We are going to the moon. And I would love for a Democratic politician, a leader in the party, to say, we're doing universal health care, period. We are doing the Green New Deal, period. We are raising the minimum wage to a living wage, or we are instituting universal basic income, or we are doing these things that need to be done for people to have a good quality of life in this country. We are doing it. We're not going to say, I don't know, I just don't think it's feasible right now. We're going to say, no, fuck it, we're going to make it happen. I would love to see that. I wish that that would happen. But just because that hasn't happened doesn't mean that the Democrats are not truly the opposition party, or they're no different than the Republicans or whatever. And I know it's frustrating, especially for someone like you who is way further to the left than I am. Like, I know it's frustrating, but no, I don't think it means that the Democrats aren't really the opposition party. Andrew C. Hawkins says, are you a coffee drinker? If so, are there any good roasteries in Western Maryland? As someone who drinks a fairly large amount of coffee, I find that the freshness of the roast tends to matter the most with regard to flavor. I have no idea if there are any good roasters in Western Maryland. I have never checked. I have never paid attention. I generally, my go-to brand used to be 8 o'clock, which I know a lot of people actually really don't like. I was surprised to find like a lot of people really don't like 8 o'clock coffee. I've always thought it was great. So that's mostly what I drink. I drink 8 o'clock coffee, or sometimes, like a dark roast. If they have something at the grocery store that looks good to me, I can kind of, experiment and try different things. But no, I've never really tried local roasteries. Maybe I should look into that. It's a good suggestion. I've never been like a coffee nerd. Like I've never been, I drink multiple cups of coffee every day, but it's not something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. I'm not like serious about my coffee to that extent. So, but no, I've never looked into local roasteries, but maybe I will. John Burns, he says, Steve, I'm curious if you're thinking of following the Washington football team, both during the season, but keeping tabs on what's going on in the front office, as Dan Snyder has gotten, or perhaps woken up to the reality that, well, men are pigs. I know you're shocked at that news. Well, I'll give you a minute to compose yourself. Thank you. I need a minute. Okay, I'm good. There's been threatened lawsuits by the cheerleaders, and some of the minority owners are trying to sell their ownership stakes faster than Enron shareholders near the end. I think it's good what's been happening with the football team, as I thought Dan was just clueless about being an NFL owner, but it turns out he might have had very little insight into what many others in the organization were doing, and he's now attempting to clean the team of those who were the real criminals. And it's one thing to look at the investment companies who push Nike and FedEx to pull their sponsorship of a football team, but guys who have egos big enough to commit these criminal acts sometimes talk or brag. This gets out to another corporation who puts information like this together, and suddenly it's more than just trying to win back investors, it's changing the entire philosophy. So will you follow and see if the giggling media will actually hold Dan's feet to the fire? Will you see if they actually ask the tough questions, or be disappointed when they do nothing? These activities don't exist in a vacuum. It's just sad that the football team is also linked with two ongoing political machines that never seem to stop. And I think changing the name was important, but was it simply a smokescreen for what else was going on with the team? I loathe football. I loathe the NFL. I think it's one of the most ugly, hateful, detestable things about our culture. It's one of my, if not my least favorite sports. I hate everything about it. I don't watch it. I'm not the least bit interested in it. So no, I am not going to follow the Washington football team. I do think it's good that they changed the name. And or that they're going to change the name right now. I mean, they changed it to the Washington football team, and they're going to eventually change it to something else. I think that's great. It's about 50 years overdue, but at least they're doing it. So I think that's great. Good for them. As for other stuff going on, or what their motives might have been, or is it a smokescreen to distract from something else? I don't know. I really don't care. If the NFL went out of business tomorrow, I would think that was fucking fantastic, because I think they're detestable. I think the league is gross and detestable. I think the sport itself is ugly and hideous and brutal, and I hate it. So I don't care. Like, I'm happy that they changed their racist name, but as for the rest of it, I'm not planning on paying that much attention. If people talk about it on Twitter or something and I happen to notice, I'll learn about it that way. But no, I'm going to make no effort whatsoever to follow the Washington football team. Ahoy, no, I'm not in the USA. I get my information from the local newspaper and online news sources, mainly the Young Turks for USA News, and the news coming from the USA is dire. Trump wants to delay the election, something I predicted in a question in 2016, and other anti-democratic moves by Republicans. Legitimate peaceful protests are met with state violence. The Democratic Party moves even more to the right on health care in the middle of a pandemic that's leaving millions homeless or dead. This is the start of any straight-to-VHS disaster porn movie starring B-list actors like Donald Trump. Is the USA even going to make it to Inauguration Day at this point? How do you experience the collapse of your country in your day-to-day life? Or should I take the news less seriously? No, I think you're taking it as seriously as it is warranted. I don't think you need to take it less seriously. I think a lot of us Americans need to take it more seriously. I do think there will still be a country by Inauguration Day. I don't think we're anywhere near that close to total societal collapse. But things are bad. Trump does not have the power as the president to delay the election. That would require an act of Congress. And it wouldn't be, and they would have to do something, it would have to be more comprehensive than just postpone the election. I mean, they would have to, you know, they may have to do something about moving Inauguration Day. There's all kinds of stuff that they would have to do. And Trump can't do that by himself, and that's not going to happen. I just don't think that's going to happen. But the mere fact that the President of the United States even felt comfortable suggesting it is terrifying. Because we know that Trump has allies in Congress. We know that the Republicans in Congress will back him. And that if he's serious, and I mean, some of the, to their credit, some Republicans came out and said they would not support postponing the election. But we also know that there's a difference between a Republican saying something and a Republican doing something. And I would not trust all of those Republicans who bravely stood up and said, no, we wouldn't postpone the election no matter what Donald Trump wanted. It would not surprise me at all for those same people, when push came to shove, to vote for whatever Trump wanted. Like, so the fact that it's even being brought up is scary and completely unprecedented. Like, no president. I mean, fuck, we had an election during the Civil War. All right? We had a presidential election during the Civil War. And now we're talking about, well, the pandemic, we might have to just postpone it because Trump is paranoid about mail-in ballots. So, I mean, yeah, it's scary. You know, it's scary. The fact that the President of the United States feels so free, so at liberty to lie about stuff like the state legislature in Nevada that I mentioned. I mentioned it during the Facepalm 5 this week. The legislature in Nevada passed a bill to send registered voters mail-in ballots. That's what they did. Trump called that an illegal coup. Elected legislators doing their jobs and passing a bill that automatically sends ballots to voters so they can vote in an upcoming election. Trump called that an illegal coup. So the fact that Trump is the president is very, very scary. And the fact that he has as much support in the government as he does, and he has enough people who are still willing to treat him as a legitimate president, is scary. So yeah, you should take it seriously. And yeah, it does feel dystopian sometimes. It still feels like, what the fuck is going on? For sure. So no, I don't think you should take it less seriously. I think if anything, a lot of us in the United States should take it more seriously. Neo-normie UPS man of the apocalypse. Did you watch the Axios video of Trump? As I think you should do a response video on the necessity of responsibility when it comes to the presidency, as even Nixon took responsibility for his actions. But Trump actually said that America was doing better on death than the rest of the world, so 1 in 195 countries did better. He also dodged responsibility for everything from the soldier bounties to the COVID spread. Really, I don't even understand why he's in the job and why Pence hasn't just arrested him on grounds of insanity. I did watch the Axios interview. I thought it was both cathartic and scary because, you know, like I said before, like I said, just in the answer to the last question, like, Trump is the president of the United States, and that's scary. You know, like, so. But yeah, I mean, I thought that Jonathan Swan did fantastic as the interviewer. I thought Trump revealed his incompetence and his ignorance and his narcissism and his sociopathy more clearly and undeniably than he has for a long time. And for whatever reason, that interview has stuck. That interview has gotten people's attention. So that's a good thing. You know, I don't know if anybody is learning anything about Trump they didn't already know, but if somehow they are, good. If they are having a moment of clarity that they haven't had before, and they're realizing, oh shit, it's really bad that this guy is in charge, especially now, that's great. I don't know if I'm going to do a response video about it. I had an idea for something I don't know. But a lot of people have already said what I would say, you know. So I don't know if I'm going to do a video about it, but yeah, of course, the necessity of responsibility, especially for the president, is of utmost importance if you want to have a functioning democracy. And I thought the Axios interview, it was funny. I saw someone on Twitter say it sure was considerate of President Trump to record that 1 hour campaign video for Joe Biden like that, because moving on, Nonstop Pop says, along the same lines of why do conservatives like Star Trek, can you think of any other examples of series which conservatives love that they probably shouldn't? I was thinking about G.I. Joe. It seems like straightforward military propaganda on the surface, and it certainly is that. But there's more going on that they're missing, and it tickles me. If you think about it, G.I. Joe, by which I mean the old Sunbow animated series from the mid-'80s, seems to depict America as a kind of socialist democratic utopia. No one is homeless, no one is poor, racism isn't a thing, diversity everywhere, clean streets, safe neighborhoods, practically no police presence whatsoever. And the stars of the show are a diverse group of basically superheroes without superpowers who, while being part of the military, all display their own unique style and personality. And they are fighting Cobra, capitalist terrorists, all about money, power, and authority. All of Cobra's troops wear the same uniforms with their faces hidden, stamping out all individuality except for the upper echelons of power. I wonder how many pro-gun, pro-military, pro-police, pro-capitalist conservatives look at G.I. Joe and think, yeah, baby, might is right, guns are rad, explosions. All the while they're actually mouthpieces for Cobra's philosophy. What do you think? I have not actually watched the old G.I. Joe cartoon in a long time, so I was not I'm interested now to watch it again and see if your take on it holds up, because that's really interesting. And I mean, from what I remember about it, it does make sense. Like, I did watch G.I. Joe when I was a kid, and from what I can recall, that does make sense for sure. Another example that I might cite in the same genre is the classic He-Man cartoons. Both the classic He-Man and also the original She-Ra. And of course, the new version of She-Ra on Netflix has been the cause of bullshit made up controversy, because a bunch of fucking people, a bunch of white guys like my age suddenly decided, when they were making a new She-Ra, and it was going to have queer characters, and it was going to be targeted at girls, and it was going to be diverse and inclusive, and have progressive themes and all this stuff. Like, all of a sudden, a lot of white guys my age decided that the original She-Ra was like their favorite fucking thing ever, and they couldn't believe that the new version was going to be so different, and that their childhood had been ruined because somebody decided to make this She-Ra cartoon. And if you watch the original She-Ra, which I have, it is not like this right-wing little boy fantasy. Like, it's actually, I mean, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is surprisingly progressive too. I mean, yes, you have to view it all you have to never forget that, I mean, it is a toy commercial. That's why it exists. So it's not perfect, but within that context, there are some shockingly left-wing themes and some very, very liberal, very progressive, very sort of, there's some very, very strong, unapologetic environmentalist themes. And She-Ra, I think, arguably is even more that than He-Man is. So all these people, all these right-wing, dipshit white guy douchebags who lost their shit over the new She-Ra, because I don't think they had watched the original She-Ra in quite some time. Or if they had, they completely, it was right over their fucking head. Because it's a similar case to what you're talking about with G.I. Joe. So that would be one. Obviously, Star Wars is a big one. The enemies in Star Wars are literally fascists. The good guys in Star Wars are literally armed revolutionaries trying to overthrow the fascist government. Like, it's not even subtle, but somehow these guys have missed the point. So, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of examples you could cite. Yeah, for sure. Stephen Clenard, what needs to happen to get that Stephen Stuffy / the Whirlpool crossover episode that all of us entitled fanboys are demanding? There's not going to be a crossover episode anytime soon, but there was a little crossover reference in the season finale of the Whirlpool that went up today, when Michael Worley mentions the name of the detective agency that he hired to do contact tracing to try and determine who infected Novation with COVID-19, and he mentions that the agency he hired is Featherworth and Associates, which is Bosco's detective agency, the rival detective agency to Toby Benson Investigations, maybe. So there was and we've heard Stuffy's voice in the show, I think, as well. So it's been established that they inhabit the same universe. But as for like a full-fledged crossover episode, I have no idea for what that would be, and I have no plans to do that. But it has been established that they do exist in the same universe. John Brockman says, the fall semester is coming up, and I need to get back on a normal diurnal schedule. You know, where sunrise is a time for waking up instead of going to bed. I've never had any luck getting up a little earlier every day. Working on a mild sleep deficit, I always end up crashing hard. So instead, I'm staying up a lot later every day. Yesterday, I made it to 1 p.m., hoping to make it to dinner time today. Anyway, what's your over-under on how long it takes Biden to say he's not going to prosecute Trump if he wins in November? Well, now, he's already said he's not going to prosecute him. And I actually think that that is appropriate. I don't think the president should be saying that he is going to prosecute anybody, because that is not the president's role. That is why we have an attorney general who, even though the attorney general is appointed by the president, the attorney general is supposed to be independent, not merely doing the president's bidding. So I think it's completely appropriate for Joe Biden to say, when I am president, I will not prosecute Trump, because that's not his job. And he has also said that if his Justice Department makes a determination that prosecuting Trump is appropriate, he will not stand in the way of that. So I actually don't have a problem with Biden on this issue. I don't want him to, because I don't want him to say, you know, to do his version of what Trump was saying about Hillary Clinton in 2016. I don't want Joe Biden to come out and say, like, when I'm president, Donald Trump's going to be in jail. That's not a president's job. That's the Justice Department's job, to investigate, to determine if prosecution is warranted, to prosecute. And Biden has said, if my Justice Department conducts an investigation and decides that it's worth prosecuting Trump when he is no longer president, I will not stand in the way of that. And that's all I want to hear, right? So I don't have a problem at all with Biden on that issue. Danny K says, hi, Steve. I recently saw a video of what appeared to be two PAC-Leds discussing their top 10 TNG episodes. It made me curious as to what your top 10 DS9 episodes are. Would you consider doing a similar video to the one put out by the two PAC-Leds? Thank you very much. Hope all is well. P.S. Is it possible that 300 in all its vile, nightmarish, pro-fascist absurdity was intended to be a parody the way Starship Troopers was and we all just missed it? I have not seen the video you're talking about. I don't know if, I don't think I would ever do a video that was just my top 10 DS9 episodes. I mean, maybe I would, like, for a Not Actually Trek Actually, but it doesn't really suit the format of Trek Actually, because those videos ideally have like a thesis that I'm arguing. And like, you know, top 10 DS9 episodes is just like a list video. But I mean, I might do it at some point. So, I mean, I have no plans to, but I might do it at some point. And as for top 10 episodes, I don't know. The Visitor would be up there. Duet would be up there. That's another great DS9 episode. For the Uniform, Past Tense, Far Beyond the Stars, Move Along Home. No, I'm kidding. I do like Move Along Home, though. It will not be in my top 10, but I sincerely like Move Along Home. I don't think it's a bad episode. I don't know. It's tough to pick a top 10 off the top of my head like that. But I mean, Visitor is my favorite ever. Pale Moonlight, and the Pale Moonlight is a great one. Yeah, I mentioned Far Beyond the Stars. That's a great episode. It's Only a Paper Moon, the Nog episode where he's recovering from his war trauma. That's a great one. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to pick. It's tough to pick, but there's plenty of great episodes to pick from. But yeah, probably won't do a top 10 DS9 episodes video. At least, I mean, I might at some point, but I don't plan to anytime soon. And for your PS, is it possible that 300 is actually a parody? No, it's not. And actually, if you want a more thorough explanation or a more thorough argument as to why it is, I do not think it is fair to dismiss Zack Snyder's shittier tendencies as a filmmaker by just saying, oh, it must have been satire or it must have been a parody or whatever. Watch Maggie Mae Fish's new video about Snyder. It's her second video in a series about the work of Zack Snyder, and it's called, I think it's called "We're All Already Dead" or something like that. And she focuses mostly on Dawn of the Dead, but comments on all of his filmography. And one of the things she mentions is people saying like, well, maybe the more problematic parts of Snyder's work are meant to be satirical. And she makes a very compelling case as to why that is probably not the case. And I agree with her. I do not think, I don't think Zack Snyder's work deserves to be assumed that it is complex enough to qualify as satire or even parody. So no, I do not think so. I do not think so. Orion McMurray. I seen a commercial on late night TV for Dutch Boy Paint, and one of the voices used for the Dutch Boy app in the computer sounds quite a bit like Stuffy. And speaking of which, there was another commercial I seen for Trumpy the Bear. It comes with its own US flag. Both of these can be freely seen on YouTube for the curious. The things I put up with while watching old Star Trek shows on broadcast TV. Apparently, I mean, I've been told recently that several of my impressions sound like Stuffy in ways that I didn't think they sounded. So it's entirely possible that the voice you heard on the Dutch Boy commercial sounds like Stuffy and is not. I have not seen the commercial, so I don't know. I'm not sure if it sounds like Stuffy or not. But it's apparently it's a very popular voice for commercials. Fernando Nogales, how would you cross over Discovery, Picard, and hypothetically Strange New Worlds? How would you write this event? I was thinking about this earlier after I first saw your question, and I think it would be fun to do something reminiscent of the way they cross over the TNG crew and the TOS crew in the Star Trek novel Federation by Garfield and Judith Reeves Stevens, where there's some kind of cosmic event. There's like a massive like black hole or something, and in their own separate time periods, Kirk's Enterprise and Picard's Enterprise both get caught in the event horizon of this massive black hole, which somehow manages to not only warp. It's so big that it not only warps space, but it also warps time, so much so that while both ships are caught in the event horizon, they can see each other. And they've both been, the novel has been following them in parallel stories as they approach this meeting point. And it's a really, really clever idea. So maybe something like that. There's some kind of event in space, some kind of massive like cosmic anomaly that each crew in its own time period is investigating for their own reason. And when they converge on this point in their own time periods, they meet each other, and that's how the crossover happens. But I mean, as far as an actual story, I don't know. But I think something like that would be cool. Have parallel stories running simultaneously with each cast for each show, and then they sort of cross over as a result of the thing that they are all independently investigating, causing some kind of a bridge that allows them all to meet. Sean Hartley says, "Hi, Steve. So, do you think Vic Fontaine from DS9 is a sentient hologram in the same way that Voyager's Doctor and TNG's Moriarty are? Everyone seems to be just fine with the fact that Julian's friend Felix created a life form, even though Picard was kind of pissed at Geordi for not thinking about what he said when he created Moriarty. No consequences for just creating a life form, and everyone just goes to him for advice. Nog lived with the guy for what was probably something like 3 months. It was only after Vic helped Nog that Cisco agreed to allow Vic's program to run 26 hours a day. I love that they had a character like Vic in the show. It added a new spice to the interactions between the characters. Do you like Vic? Do you think his program would have ever left DS9 or perhaps gone to Earth if we had seen more of DS9 after the series ended? It would have been interesting seeing him use Voyager's Doctor's mobile emitter to have a stroll around Earth or something in an episode. That could have been interesting. Yeah, I mean, I like Vic. I went through a phase when I didn't like Vic, and I think there was a period in the fandom, I think when the show was still on, there was a segment of Deep Space Nine fandom I remember very well that just hated Vic, that thought he was a terrible character and a terrible idea and could not understand why the writers of the show evidently loved him so much, right? But I've grown out of that, and I really like Vic. And as for whether he is truly a sentient hologram or just appears to be, I mean, he's definitely self-aware. You know, he was written to be self-aware, but that's as far as Deep Space Nine ever really goes. You know, we're never told explicitly that Vic is a sentient being like the Doctor or like Moriarty, but I think he would almost have to be, because that's how, I mean, the Doctor wasn't created to be sentient. The Doctor kind of, we're meant, I think we're meant to see it as the Doctor attained sentience because because he lived, you know, because he operated so much, because he was running for so long, and he was able to learn new things, and his personality was able to evolve, and he was able to grow beyond his original programming and become become a unique individual, not just another EMH. And Vic goes through the same thing. You know, when they allow his program to start running 26 hours a day, you know, I think he goes through the same process. So I think he would almost have to be an individual, a sentient individual, in a way similar to how the Doctor is. Yeah, and I think to their credit, the writers didn't really worry about it. You know, the writers just said, well, you know, he was created as being self-aware, and that explains how he knows he's a hologram, and he knows it's not really Vegas and all that stuff. You know, he knows that the crew coming in work on a space station. Like, that just explains all of that. It allows him to be hipper and to be smarter and to be, you know, to be a part of the cast, to be in the same world as the characters. And then after that, they didn't really worry about it, because that's all they needed. So yeah, but yeah, I think Vic is a really good character. I like Vic a lot. Dr. Babylon, Steve, would you agree that astrology is morally reprehensible? When you strip out the fortune telling, all you're left with is a complex system of codified stereotypes. I dislike woo in general, but I've got a particular hatred for pseudopsychology since I'm autistic and I've had pseudopsych directed at me in the past. It's embarrassing how many liberals buy into this stuff. I agree with you. I think astrology and anything that is based on people claiming to have abilities that they don't have, or claiming to sell you something that they do not have to sell you, is morally reprehensible. I think astrology is no different than homeopathy, or like psychic surgery, or psychic readings, or people who claim they can speak to the dead, or anything like, or any kind of pseudoscience, any kind of mystical thing where people are making promises that either they don't know that they can keep, or they know that they can't keep, right? Like, if you, like, there's no medical efficacy to homeopathy. So if you sell someone a bottle of homeopathic pills, you are selling them nothing, but you're telling them that it's not nothing. And that's wrong, right? That basically, that's fraud. That's wrong. You're lying to people. If you are an astrologer and you are telling them that if they can come to understand the motions of the planets and the other celestial bodies, that they can understand their lives or their destiny, or that the motions of these objects in the sky has some bearing on how their life turns out, or which direction they go, or what their fate is. If you tell people that, you are telling them something that is not true. And that's wrong. It's wrong to profit by lying to someone. It's wrong to profit by exploiting someone's ignorance or fears or grief or credulity or whatever. You are selling them a product that does not exist. You are taking their money in exchange for something that you claim you are giving them, but you are not. So it's wrong. I don't understand why it's even legal, to be honest. I think it should be illegal, at least in terms of a commercial thing. Like, if you want to be an astrologer and or a tarot card reader, and you just want to do it for fun because, you know, you just think it's fun, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're taking people's money, or you are actively trying to convince them that this is true, and you're saying that they should pattern their lives after it or whatever, that's wrong. That's wrong. Yes, it is morally reprehensible. I agree with you completely. Siamak Yaminov Shah, regarding other Star Trek YouTubers, specifically Lore Reloaded, I followed him for a while, but unfollowed maybe a year ago after starting to get real anti-SJW vibes and just general white cis male anger. I recognize I'm saying this as a cis straight male, but I'm seeing some progressive YouTubers I respect, such as Jesse Gender, collaborating with him. Did I misread something? Should I revisit my decision? Maybe that was just his dislike of Discovery and I read in too much. No, I'm not a big fan of his politics either. I don't think he's as unreasonable as, you know, some of the worst, like dyed-in-the-wool, hardcore, professional anti-SJWs. But politically, he and I do disagree on a lot, and that's one of the reasons why I don't really pay a lot of attention to him and don't really watch his stuff, or we don't really talk that much. I think he's a nice guy, but and I don't have any particular grudge against him. I don't think we're enemies or anything, but I just see I just don't think there's a lot there for me in terms of his content. But I mean, and I know I love Jesse. Jesse's one of my favorite people. And if Jesse thinks that collaborating with him is something worth doing, that's up to Jesse. I don't hold that against her. I don't think he's evil. I don't think he's like, the kind, I don't think it's a case where it's like, oh no, he's so bad that if Jesse is his friend, then I can't be her friend. I mean, I have been in situations like that, or someone that I thought was a good person or thought was a friend. And now it's like, hey, guess what? I'm, collaborating with this person over here who is the biggest piece of shit on the internet. And I said, okay, you know what? If you're going to do that, I'm out. Like, we're not cool anymore. I don't think Lore Reloaded is that bad, but his shitty politics and other stuff have compelled me to take a step away from him. But if Jessie Gender wants to continue collaborating with him, like, that doesn't, I mean, I trust Jessie. I think she's great. I like her a lot. I like her content. And if she gets something out of collaborating with him, that's up to her. And I don't hold that against her. And as for, what you should think, I mean, that's up to you. Maybe you should reevaluate. Maybe you shouldn't. Like, it's whoever you watch is up to you. Plasma Burn Death. Steve, would you be willing to discuss for fun with your twist on the topic what top technologies that were behind their times compared to what we have today, and a few possible in-universe explanations for it? For example, thin, lightweight, ultra-high-def phones when they somehow reverted to flip phones for comms. And thanks for your hard work, and I hope you and everyone continues to be safe. Well, thank you, Plasma Burn Death. The communicators are a good example. I mean, I guess, you could explain that if you wanted to explain how we went back to, flip phone like devices after we had these things, hundreds of years before. You could say, like, well, maybe, there's something about communicating in space across long distances that, the technology wasn't feasible to put in this kind of a package, so they had to come up with something else. Like, you could always make something up to make it make sense. My favorite example is pads. Starting in the next generation, we saw the pad, they were basically tablet computers, and they came in different sizes. There were big ones and there were small ones, and you always saw Enterprise crew members and Deep Space Nine crew members and Voyager crew members walking around with these little with pads, with these plastic flat screen computers, and they would have documents or schematics or whatever kind of data that they had on them, and they would use them instead of passing papers around. It was like, instead of paperwork, they had it on these pads. And that, we have something like that very much now. People have iPads, people have Kindles, people have, flat screen tablet computers. But they didn't foresee in the late 80s and early 90s, when they were presenting this in Star Trek, they didn't foresee that you wouldn't need more than one. Like, if you just issued a pad to every person on the ship, that's all they would need. And if you needed to show something to someone that was on your pad, you wouldn't have to go to where they are and physically hand it to them and say, check this out. You could just send it to them digitally from your pad to theirs, like an email or a file transfer. Like, you wouldn't have to, like Geordi wouldn't have to get on the turbo lift and go from engineering up to the bridge to show Captain Picard what he wants to do to the engines to get out of this Romulan trap or whatever the fuck. He could just show it to him. He could just say, hey, here's what I was thinking to do, and what do you think? Boom, right? But they hadn't figured that out yet on TNG. So you would see people like carrying information on pads to show other characters. Or my favorite, you would see people holding a stack of pads. Like each pad was a piece of paper. Like, you could only put one document per pad. And if you wanted to show somebody more than one report, you had to have a pad for each report, and you would just walk around with an armful of pads. Obviously, that's not how it works. And for whatever reason, the writers who created that just did not see that far into the future. They got it close. Ooh, they got it so close, but not close enough. Just like the people who created, the writers in Classic Trek, who created the flip phone-like communicator. They got it right. They accidentally correctly predicted that we would have phones like that would flip open. They just didn't realize that in a few years we would move even beyond that, and we wouldn't need flip phones anymore because we would have stuff like this. So yeah, but that's the pad is probably my favorite example. Trisha Brady, hi Steve. With Lower Decks launching this week, what are your thoughts on the lack of international distribution? Personally, I think it is a crock of crap in this day and age that any big franchise would geo-restrict content. I live in Ireland and so watch Discovery on Netflix and Picard on Prime Video. Though the two different platforms are annoying, I don't mind paying for them as I want to support the franchise, same as I support you and other creators here on Patreon. I would gladly pay to watch Lower Decks. In fact, I want to in order to support the franchise. Instead, I am going to have to acquire it the same way I did Short Treks. Do you think with all the streaming platforms this issue should be a thing of the past? Hope you and yours are safe and well. Thank you very much, and the same to you and yours. It does seem a little ridiculous, doesn't it? It does seem a little ridiculous. I know that I've heard the showrunner of Lower Decks talk about it because he has been asked about it, and apparently it's something that they're working on that they had hoped would be resolved by the time the show debuted in the United States, and it just wasn't. So I know it's frustrating for the creators of the show. Of course, they want their show to be seen as widely as possible, and there's no reason why people in other countries should not be able to see it at the same time that we can see it here. And yeah, it's ridiculous. Like it's ridiculous. I think I may be wrong on this. I think with Lower Decks specifically, there was some kind of COVID related issue that they just couldn't get the deal in place in time or something. But maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I heard somebody say that and that wasn't true. But anyway, but yeah, I'm completely sympathetic to you and completely with you. Like there's no reason why the international distribution rights to something like that should have been locked down months and months and months before the show debuted. Like that should already be done. And that should have been the case with Short Treks too, and it wasn't. And I'm not sure what the story is behind that. But yeah, you're completely right. Joe McClory says, so in Wisconsin, pardon me. So in Wisconsin, we finally got a statewide mask mandate at the beginning of the month. And quite frankly, it is long overdue given our numbers, and I have seen an increase in mask use in general. You may not know this, but in the middle of May, the state Supreme Court ended the lockdown of businesses that was to end at the end of the month and declared that the governor did not have the power to impose it to begin with, and the opposite happened. People took the cue to mean the threat was over and mask use and distancing were no longer necessary and began to live life less safely even before most businesses opened back up, and there was less mask use and people started to host more get-togethers. My point here is even without endorsement, there is a message sent by laws that people do latch on to. And while some of that is likely the threat of endorsement, even just having a law known or the state saying to people that this is important and you should change your behavior will change behavior, even if it is grudgingly. So anyway, police departments in my state did two things. One that I kind of agree with and the other that I feel is a really bad idea if you want to help protect the people that it is your mandate to protect. The police departments in at least 5 counties in Wisconsin decided to not enforce some of the new regulations, which, as they would have done so in a way that mostly harmed the poorest and most marginalized far more than others, I kind of agree with, as this sort of law still benefits society if it is on the books and known but not enforced. But sadly, the other thing they did was make an announcement publicly saying that they would not be enforcing these guidelines. Not only removing the threat of enforcement, but also sending a message that the people that we look up to in these times are divided on this, and maybe things are not as bad as the governor seems to think they are. And I can't help but think that sending that message will end up costing lives. What do you think? Can unenforced laws do good for people? Are the police putting people into harm by deciding not to do their job in this case and making it worse by publicly stating that they will not? Yeah, I think I see this pretty much exactly the same way you do. Yeah, I think if the fear is that the police in enforcing the laws would disproportionately target at-risk communities or minority communities or communities of color or marginalized communities just in general, then yeah, I think it is probably preferable that they choose not to enforce these particular regulations. But if they choose not to enforce them, they can just choose not to enforce them. You're right. By making a public announcement and saying, we are not going to enforce these laws, they are sending a message to the people saying, you don't have to follow the law. Nothing's going to happen to you. And implicit in that is, we're not enforcing the law because we don't think it's necessary. Because we don't think that there's that much of a threat. Otherwise, we would be enforcing the law. So yeah, I think you're completely right. Unenforced laws can do good. I've said before, I don't think I've ever said it in this context, in the context of the COVID pandemic, but when the government passes a law, they are setting a priority. They are setting a standard. They are saying, this is something that is important to us, that we want to be important in our society, right? And that exists apart from enforcement. Enforcement of the law is still very important. But if you pass a law, like for instance, if you pass a law that says, that is designed to make it easier for people to vote, that mandates a certain number of polling places, or that polls be open a certain number of hours, or prohibits, the implementation of certain restrictions or whatever, you have to enforce that law to make sure that it's being carried out. But just passing the law sends a message. Just passing the law tells people, this is important to us. We think this is a priority, and we think that this is something that we need to be concerned about. And passing the law gives us an opportunity to be concerned about it, gives us a reason to think about it and talk about it. So yes, just by their mere existence, passing a law is a way of our society telling itself, this is the kind of society we think we need to be. This is the direction we need to go. So yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you about everything in that question. Absolutely. John Ginger says, hi, Steve. I hope you're doing well. I'm still here. I'm managing to make my unemployment money work and still be a patron, which is important to me. Your videos and this great community you have built up are what has been getting me through this pandemic with a modicum of sanity. A question, right. Which division of Starfleet would you want to serve in? Command, operations, or sciences? And within those, what type of job would you prefer? Well, first of all, I'm glad that you're still around, and I'm glad that you're doing well enough that you can still be a patron. Obviously, there's, as I said before, like there's no hard feelings at all if you have to not be a patron anymore for your own good. But I'm happy that you're still here, and I'm glad that it's important enough to you, and I'm happy about everything you said. That's really nice, and I'm glad you're still here. As for what Starfleet division would I want to serve in, I would want to be in the command division, and I think I don't know, I think I'd be a great first officer. I'm just saying. Bruce Bardup says, why do we talk so much about Star Trek when real-world history throws up as many dramatic moral dilemmas, issues around society and technology, also meeting strange new people and discovering that, shocker, they don't like being tyrannized either. And many are braver than you are in tackling said tyranny. Do you use chemical weapons? Yes, but only in retaliation. Do you tell the people this? No. That's both Churchill's BE and Hitler's Reich on both counts. Well, I think the reason why we talk about Star Trek maybe more, not just Star Trek, but fictional worlds in general more than actual world history, is because when you put it in a fictional context, when you talk about it as metaphor, as allegory, it creates separation between the thing that is being referred to, the reality and the audience. And within that separation is room to think, and room to consider, and room to question, and room to form your own opinion. If we focus just on real history, there are all kinds of things that could get in the way from us having an honest discussion with each other and with ourselves about the issues at hand. Maybe we want to use Winston Churchill as an example. There are a lot of people on the British side of the pond and on the American side of the pond and everywhere else in the world who have very, very strong feelings about Winston Churchill. Many of them are incredibly positive. They view Winston Churchill as one of the great leaders in human history. They view him as one of the people that won the Second World War, that led the British Empire through that war intact and allowed them to rebuild. And, there are a lot of really great admirers of Winston Churchill. And that creates a barrier if you want to talk about the ways in which he was not such a great guy. If you want to talk about his imperialism, if you want to talk about his racism, if you want to talk about all the sorts of things that he did and said that are not becoming of a great leader, that do not go along with that image of him as a great leader. But if you can take a fictional character and use that fictional character to critique the same sorts of things that you see in Churchill that you would like to talk about, people might be more open to that. People who are big Churchill fans might be more open to see those flaws dramatized in a fictional character and consider them because their bias, their pro-Churchill bias, won't kick in. you know? So I think that's why. I think sometimes it's easier to get to the root of the issue when we aren't using an actual example from history that we might be extremely biased about in one direction or the other. And, you know, those biases and prejudices still come into play when we're talking about fictional stuff, but often not as strongly, and not as personally. Sometimes, but I don't think quite as often. So that's why I think so. That's why I think it's easier to talk about them in terms of something like Star Trek as opposed to real history. Matthew Zeidman says, "Hi, Steve. Have you watched Renegade Cut's recent piece, Star Trek Voyager is good, actually? It seems right up your alley." No, I have not. But now that you mention it, I will try to make a point to watch it. But I have not watched it yet, no. But thank you for the question. Michael Hanlon says, "Hey, Steve, I wanted to thank you for," or Hainline. I'm pretty sure you told me how to pronounce it, and I forgot because I'm a dick. I'm sorry. Anyway, Michael. "Hey, Steve, I wanted to thank you for the last Q&A where you answered my question about how to keep going through the clusterfuck that is 2020, and your answer legitimately made me feel better." Well, I'm glad. Thank you very much. I hope it did. "Did you get a chance to watch Lower Decks in the last 24-ish hours? Are you looking forward to the show? I really enjoyed the first episode, and I think maybe a comedy Trek series is just what I need right now. Though I understand it's not for everyone. Still don't understand why so many fans decided they hated it before they'd even seen it, though. Well, that is the current state of a lot of fandom, unfortunately. I really liked it. Yeah, I watched it the first day that it went up, and I really liked it. I was actually a little bit surprised by how much I liked it because I've been kind of ambivalent toward it. I've been in the camp of, well, this could be good or this could be horrible. I thought it was good. It made me laugh a couple of times. There were a couple of bits in it that I thought were absolutely inspired. There's a running gag in the first episode where one of the crew members is going on a first date. And then during their first date, like chaos erupts on the ship. There's like a disaster on the ship and people are firing phasers and running for their lives and there's alarms going off. And the character and his date, like they continue their date. Like they keep talking to each other and asking each other questions and getting to know each other and flirting. And it's very sweet. And it's also so funny, like the juxtaposition of, you know, chaos erupting all over the ship and these two people in the midst of that chaos carrying on this really sweet first date is so funny. I really, really like that bit. And it's so clever. Like it's a good idea. And I really liked it. And also the opening title sequence is brilliant. The opening title sequence made me laugh out loud. The only minor quibble I have with it is that the opening title sequence does not seem to be reflective of the actual show, because the joke of the opening title sequence is that the ship is arriving in dangerous situations and then either screwing things up or turning around and leaving, right? Like, and that doesn't quite seem to be the direction that the actual show is going. The crew on the Cerritos does not seem to be inept or cowardly. It's just written as a comedy. Like they're not like incompetent people. They're a little colorful. You know, they're a little wackier than typical Star Trek characters. They're written more for laughs than like the cast of TNG, but they're not like buffoons. You know, so the opening title sequence doesn't quite match what the actual show is, but taken just as a piece unto itself, God, it made me laugh. It was so funny. So yes, I watched Lower Decks and I really liked it and I'm looking forward to more of it for sure. Matthew Datcher, "Hi Steve, please let me know how you would deal with this problem. We know you have loud vehicles that occasionally pass your home. We can hear them in your recordings. I live near a heavily traveled street here in suburban Maryland. Since the pandemic lockdown, I've noticed the number of vehicles passing through has dropped significantly. That's fine, even now, almost 5 months into the lockdown. Isn't it sad we've been at this almost 5 months? But it was never the din of normal traffic that bothered me. However, a couple of weeks into the lockdown, I started to hear loud vehicles passing through at high revs. I'm talking about the Civics with the mufflers that might as well be called loudners, the Mustangs that sound like they have holes in the exhaust, the Ninjas driven to their red lines, etc. There's one car that I think does laps around the neighborhood several hours a day. It makes me want to yell out the window. My apologies for the language. What's wrong with your penis? I think we can do without that. I mean, I would handle the problem the same way you seem to be handling it, by seething inwardly. by shaking with impotent rage that I there's really nothing I can do about it. Like I can't just, I mean, what are we, are you gonna follow them back to their house and wreck their car? Are you gonna, rip the fucking noisemaker off the back of their car? Like I don't know what, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do. People are assholes. People are inconsiderate assholes. And they roar down residential streets with their loud ass motorcycles or their loud ass fucking mufflers or their loud ass fucking diesel engines. And they make as much noise as they can because they weren't hugged enough as kids. I don't know. I don't know why they do it. I don't know why it's important to them, but it really, really gets on my nerves. And there's nothing I can do about it except piss and moan about it to you all, I guess. So that's what I'll do. And you are welcome to do that. You are welcome to do that as well, my friend, because I know exactly how you feel. Matthew Maida, hey, Steve, a political question. One of the things that galls me in these Trump years are all these Republican pundits and politicians who have years of experience, who took stands with conviction, seemingly should know better, but nonetheless reduce themselves to be sycophants to Trump to the point of political self-harm. It is as if they want Trump to go dictator so they could still have a job after Trump comes and goes. I think the thing we have to come to peace with is that Trump is a problem unto himself. Trump as an individual being president is a problem no matter what that needs to be taken care of. But in a broader sense, Trump is the inevitable culmination of the Republican political philosophy, both as it is professed by Republicans and as we have seen Republicans act it out in their lives over the last 40 or 50 years. I mean, think about Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was someone who ran as, a conservative, as a common sense, responsible guy, law and order, and he broke the law whenever it suited him to protect his own flank, That's what, and Democrats do the same thing. I'm not saying that Democrats are completely immune to illegality or political scandal, but it seems to be much more of a problem with Republicans than with Democrats. And it seems like Republicans are way more, and not just Republican politicians, but Republican voters seem a lot more comfortable with that hypocrisy than Democrats do. Not that Democrats are innocent, because obviously they're not. But Republicans are more guilty than Democrats are, I think. And so in that sense, what Trump is doing is not all that far out of line from what has been established as what the Republican Party is and what Republican politicians want and what they will tolerate in order to get it. So, Trump, it's often said Trump is a symptom. Trump is not the disease. And the disease goes beyond the Republican Party for sure. But Trump emerged from the Republican Party. He has not been imposed on the Republican Party from the outside. He emerged from it and is a completely logical extension of it, a completely expected, sensible extension of it. So the Republicans who are going along with him are doing it because they want to, because they think he is doing a good job, because he is doing what they want him to do. And I think we need to be realistic about that. And finally, last question from Vovacat17, Vladimir Kuznetsov. Hey, Steve, so there's 1 week left for the end of my favorite TV show that is still on the air. Soon it will not be, and it seems like we are heading for an incredibly epic finale. I know you didn't make any dedicated videos, but I know you watch it. I am, of course, talking about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the show that just refuses to become a shadow of its former self and just keeps delivering. I think the episode 2 weeks ago, As I Have Always Been, is one of the best episodes of the entire series, and that's season 7. So I know you have some plans for a video about Agents, but I actually think you should make at least several, maybe over a greater time span, because it deserves it. It has kept me believing in great TV while we had no Star Trek on the air. And the topic I really want you to talk about, well, it's how Fitzsimmons is actually one of the greatest, most believable and relatable romance companionship stories ever put on TV. It is especially close to us, the nerds and the geeks, the science and exploration fans, and it deserves your video to be made about it. So not asking for promises, but will you at least consider it? Hell, do you actually agree with me on how great this story is? Yeah, I would love to do a video on Fitzsimmons. I think Fitz and Simmons are two of the best characters on the show. And their story is a great, compelling story. And even, I mean, it's been compelling this season when Fitz has been absent. Like, Fitz has not been in the show. And it's still one of the most compelling parts of the show. And all we have is Gemma. And we for most of the season, like, we don't know what she's keeping herself from remembering. We don't know where Fitz is, what he's doing, if he's even alive. Like, it's all mystery. But because we're so invested by now in Leo and Gemma being together, it's compelling. It hooks us, and it makes for great TV. And I would definitely. I mean, if I do some Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. videos, I definitely think that Fitzsimmons warrants its own video. I'll have to. It'll be a great excuse to go back and rewatch the show a little bit to refresh my memory on some stuff. But yeah, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has been a fantastic show. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has been one of my favorite corners of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And you're right, it has continually reinvented itself. It has continually remained fresh and exciting and compelling. It does not really feel like a show in its 7th season, because they have been able to reinvent it every year while still remaining true to the core of the show and the relationships that make the show work, and the sense of responsibility and optimism and wanting to make the world a better place, and feeling like it's your duty. If you have the ability to try and make the world a better place, it's your duty to do that, to pursue that. It's a great show. It's a great show. It's one of my favorite shows. I've actually liked it since the first season. A lot of people didn't really dig the first season. I thought the first season was terrific, but it has only gotten better since. It's a fantastic show. And you're right, I should do more than one video about it. And I definitely will consider doing a Fitzsimmons video as like a separate video, because obviously they deserve it. Obviously they do. All right, I'm going to turn to the live chat now. But before I do that, just give me 1 second. I have a text message I need to send, and it'll just take a second. And then I will be right with you. People are watching like, no, he's literally texting somebody during the show. Yeah, I am. I said that's what I was going to do. Okay, now I need to send... I sent the text. Now I need to send a wink emoji so they know that I was kidding about what I just texted. And then I need to say... I guess, I wasn't. Caroline says, I just got the text message. It wasn't from me. I'm not being honest. I'm sending 2 text messages. So, and now you can also see what a slow fucking texter I am. Okay, text message sent. And now I can turn to all of you wonderful people in the live chat. Let's see what we want to talk about. First of all, I want to acknowledge, actually, before I get into what everybody's talking about right this second, I have gotten some super chats that I haven't paid attention to yet, because I've been answering patron questions the whole show. So I want to mention that Flint Reed sent me 2 super chats. Thank you very much, Flint. And the question in both of them that was re-asked, because I guess Flint didn't phrase it the way they wanted to phrase it the first time, is between Plarb, who is the Pack-led character that Jason plays in the Ensign's log, and Jar Jar Binks, who is silliest, and why And the answer is Plarb is the silliest, and Plarb is also the funniest, and Plarb is also a way better character than Jar Jar is. Plarb is superior in every way. And then John Burns sent me a super chat that says, Churchill had faults. Are there any members of Antifa that you would mention as being without fault? I agree those protesting today in the U.S. are similar to the Palestinians, also without fault. Well, I think it goes beyond. I mean, with Churchill, I think. I mean, the answer is no. There's nobody who is without fault. Anti-fascists as individuals have faults. The anti-fascist movement in general is not perfect. The Palestinians are not perfect. There's probably not a Palestinian leader or Palestinian activist who is perfect. Like, no, that's not the point. I don't think you can brush off the bad parts of Churchill by saying, well, he had flaws. I think he needs to be considered, in a complex way. I don't think it's fair to I don't think you can dismiss Churchill by saying, yeah, but he was an asshole. I don't think that the good things about him don't exist because the bad things exist. I think you need to reckon with all of it. Just like we as Americans need to reckon with the founding fathers. I don't think you can't just dismiss George Washington and Thomas Jefferson because they owned slaves. But you can't just erect statues of them and treat them like idols, because they did good things apart from owning slaves. Like, it all counts, and they need to be examined in their totality. And when you say, like, yeah, Churchill had faults, and you just kind of brush it off because you just want to keep thinking of him as a hero, I think that does him a disservice. I think that does us a disservice, just as it would do a disservice to say, that the good things about him don't count because of the bad things. So I think we need to consider, especially important, significant historical figures. We really need to get into the habit of thinking about them critically and not holding on to our view of them as heroes or villains, but thinking about them critically. Now let's turn to the live chat. Let's see. And John Burns, another super chat. Churchill fought the Nazis, so he isn't Antifa. No, he is. I'm not saying that Churchill. I just said I don't think we can dismiss Churchill. But just because he was heroic in some ways doesn't mean we can just brush off the parts of him that weren't so good. That's all I'm saying. And thank you again for the super chat, my friend. Let me see here. What have I been missing here? Okay, I'm just going to go up to just like a random spot and start going through. As always, if I miss your question in the live chat, please don't take it personally, and please feel free to post it again if you really want me to see it. Matthew, I do think that's a record. I do think it took me longer than it's ever taken me to get through the patron questions, but whatever. It doesn't matter. As long as you fuckers are still watching. Secular Scholar said, do you think Lower Decks is more like Futurama or Rick and Morty with a Star Trek TNG skin? I don't know. I mean, the Rick and Morty comparison is obvious, but I can kind of see the Futurama thing. I don't know. I think I prefer Futurama to Rick and Morty, so I would like to see it more be Futurama than Rick and Morty. Let me see here. Greg Frost says, opinion on Lower Decks, Steve. I think I already said that. The only episode I've seen so far, the first episode I really enjoyed. Plasma Burn Death says, just watched your reading and answering my question. Thank you again. I hope a shorter question was a welcome one. I realized I was being too wordy. You had Ukraine transcript. My LO, yeah. But I'm glad. Thank you for the question. Radical Bacon says, Jerry Falwell Jr. got caught with a picture of his pants unzipped and has been asked to step down as president of Liberty University. Fuck Liberty University. I will co-sign the hell out of that. Fuck Liberty University and fuck Falwell Jr. Queer Pro Black says, we know you love Star Trek and some of Star Wars. Do you read books as well? Asimov's Foundation series, Le Guin's A Wizard of Earthsea, Dune, Neuromancer. Read any of those? No. I was actually, I've talked about this recently with other people. It's weird. I'm a big fan of Star Trek. I'm a big fan of Star Wars. I'm a fan of certain other popular franchises, but I've never really gotten into like literary science fiction. I've read a little tiny bit of Asimov. I've read a little bit of Bradbury. I've never read Dune. I've never read Le Guin. I've never, I'm a little bit of Harlan Ellison, but not a lot. I've never really gotten super into literary sci-fi for whatever reason. It's just never been something that I was drawn to. Pedro Noguera says, my question is about technology. Since Star Trek presents us with a great variety of props and technological ideas, I was wondering which phaser do you like best, considering the designs? I like the, well, I was going to say I like the classic Trek one, like the classic phaser pistol from TOS, but I kind of like the Discovery version of that. I like the pistol shaped phasers. So I guess I would go with something with one of those. Daryl Lett says, okay, Steve, what custom would you like to see end due to the pandemic? Some people hope it's the handshake. I'd like to see an end to looksism, the practice of judging people by their facial appearance. Yeah, because of the masks. That would be cool if we just sort of all got used to not judging people by their facial expression without getting to know them or asking them anything or whatever. Yeah, that's a good one. Handshakes, I mean, I'm not that bothered by handshakes. I mean, it's perfectly fine with me if we don't do that anymore. Herbie Vosaris says, should Scotland be independent? And if so, should they join the Euro? I have no idea. That should be up to the people of Scotland. Just got another super chat from John Burns. Thank you again, my friend. I'm interested in the New York State lawsuit against the NRA. Have you heard about it? Any thoughts? Fuck yeah. I hope that they do actually end up being able to dissolve it. I would love for the NRA to be dissolved. And I think what a perfect reason, because not because they're irresponsible, not because of their fucking gun policies, not because of, the way they intimidate legislators and buy politicians and force their agenda into law or stop laws from being passed to, it wasn't any of that. It was that they're fucking corrupt. They're fucking corrupt criminals. And now hopefully they're gonna have to go away. I think it's fantastic. I think it was some of the best news of the week. And yes, Radical Bacon just said, yeah, tots and pears. Tots and pears, NRA. You'll be okay. I thought it was great fucking news. I'm just going to go back down toward the bottom of the chat. So once again, if I missed your question earlier, I apologize. Please feel free to post it again. It's nothing personal. I'm just trying to keep up with the chat. Chris H says, in my humble opinion, Voyager is a collection of missed opportunities. If it had been done like the later Battlestar, ship stays damaged, command decisions are questioned, it could have been great. Well, yeah, I think that's one of the interesting things about Battlestar Galactica is that it does sort of, it takes some elements of the Star Trek Voyager premise and carries them forward a lot more seriously than Voyager did. And yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Voyager was a collection of missed opportunities, and a show like Battlestar shows us what those opportunities may have looked like if they had actually been taken seriously. If they had actually been fulfilled. If the writers had actually been able to write that show. Another super chat from John Burns says, I'd like to see Wayne go to jail for fraud. So, man, so would I. Wouldn't that be great if Wayne LaPierre went to jail? Oh my God, that would be so fucking great. For sure. Radical Bacon says, I want cuddles. Because of the NRA thing? Like, is that... You're in the mood for cuddles because you're like, oh, the NRA thing just, oh God, I wish I wasn't alone right now. I hope you get cuddles. If cuddles are what you want, I hope you get the cuddles you require. Some random geek says, so why do we tolerate the establishment Dems being so ableist? Well, we shouldn't. We shouldn't tolerate it. We should call them out on it and force them to change. I mean, if people are tolerating it, and I take your point, like I think it's overlooked way too much. We shouldn't tolerate it. We shouldn't tolerate ableism anywhere. We should always be calling ourselves to do better as far as that goes. Davlin Gagesphere says, so I had this idea for a Star Trek series. I call it Star Trek Future Unbound is what it's supposed to be. I think there's a typo in there. Takes place 2,000 years from current Trek and has a very interesting future. What do you think? I mean, you haven't really told me anything about it other than just that. I mean, it could be great, Like, I think I would need more than just that to decide whether or not I thought it was a good idea. But, I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea, Let me see. Robert Mill says, no one from history survives using modern mores to judge them. In 50 years, ideas might change yet again. Well, yeah, that's one of the reasons why we need to think critically. I mean, here's the thing. I do not think it is at all unfair for us to judge historical figures by our current morals. I think that's a perfectly fine thing to do. And honestly, what else are we going to judge them by? Those are the standards we have, right? But I think we need to be honest that that's what we're doing, and I think we need to apply that in a holistic way, and not with an aim of either justifying them or negating them. You know what I'm saying? Remy says, "Have you seen the shit that's going down in Shatner's Twitter? Too long, don't read of it. He's fighting teenagers who call him out for being transphobic." I've seen a little bit of that. Yeah. I'm disappointed in that, but it's Shatner, and unfortunately, Shatner is fucking Shatner. Radical Bacon, I just see on the chat on screen. "I've been doing calculus all day. My brain needs cuddles." Well, I hope your brain gets cuddles. What does your brain like to cuddle with? Crud Butts. "Hi, Steve. How are you?" "I'm fine." Isaiah where did Isaiah go? It just jumped up on me. There it is. Isaiah says, "I have the same problem in Tallahassee. Frat boys spinning off their loud ass cars in an abandoned parking lot across from where I live. Big insecurities." That's usually what I think too. Insecurity, just like lust for attention. Joe McClory says, "Do you think Picard was too hard on Geordi for making Moriarty? The developers of the holodeck didn't think to put safeguards to not create sentient life in the same way it prevents harm." Was he that hard on Geordi? I don't remember him being super hard on Geordi. I mean, I don't think he was like, "Hey, Geordi, great job," but I don't think he was like mad at him or anything, was he? Because obviously Geordi didn't mean to do it. I don't remember. 255 AD says, "About stuff like astrology and tarot cards, what about those who sell that kind of stuff as a part of their native culture, like voodoo shops? Should they be illegal?" No, I don't think it should be illegal to sell tarot cards or religious paraphernalia or stuff like that, is if it's in the context of like it's part of your culture. Or I don't think it should ever be okay to make false claims to people and be able to profit from that. Like if you're selling, if you're selling something that has to do with like your culture or your native religion or something like that, I think that's fine as long as you're not saying this cures cancer, or this is a remedy to some disease when it's not. I don't think that should ever be allowed. But just if you want to, I don't think it should be illegal to like sell tarot cards, but I think it's morally indefensible to say, "I'm going to give you a reading using these tarot cards and I will be able to tell your future." If you do it in the context of, "Hey, fuck it, let's have some fun. Let's, we both know it's bullshit, but let's do a tarot reading. It'll be fun," right? There's nothing wrong with that at all. But if you're taking someone's money and you're claiming that in exchange for that money, you can predict their future, or that these cards are doing something magical, then that you're lying. You're committing fraud. I don't think that should be allowed. Some Random Geek says, "A Democratic senator admitted on Twitter that we attempted a coup against Venezuela. Is the U.S. being more open about the terrible coups they back?" Apparently. Caroline Clark with a super chat. Thank you, Caroline, so much. I don't know how I missed this just now. Thank you for keeping us entertained. Well, you're welcome. Thank you very much for the super chat and for saying something so nice. 255 AD says, "Question, was going to the moon ever anywhere near as contentious as Medicare for all?" I was not there, so I don't remember, but I get the impression not everybody was completely on board with it, but I don't know if it was as contentious as Medicare for all. No, I don't think it was. Radical Bacon says, "You just won the lottery. What do you do with the money?" It depends on how much, but, I don't know. Move to a bigger house, take care of my friends and family, make sure that if there's anything that people close to me, people that I love, need or want, that money can take care of, that I take care of that for them, stuff like that. Donate to charities, set up like a trust or something, a college fund for people. I don't know. Phoenix Espresso, what's your opinion on the "Are Rocks Atheists" debate? I think it's silly. I think it's an attempt to establish atheism as some kind of default position when I don't think it is. And I don't think we as atheists should want it to be. No, rocks are not atheists because atheism is an opinion and rocks don't have opinions. Just like babies aren't atheists because atheism is an opinion and babies don't have opinions because they're babies. Their thought processes are not sophisticated enough yet. So yeah, that's how I feel about it. I think it's a silly argument, and it's a silly argument to make, and it's a silly argument to have. Fernando Nogales, what's your opinion on haters on Star Trek fandom? I mean, obviously, I'm not. You know, I am not a hater. I don't seek out the people who all they do is complain about stuff. All they do is point out everything that's wrong. I think it's a really, really sad state of affairs, not just in relation to Star Trek, but in relation to internet discourse as a whole, that criticism, media criticism in the minds of so many people in the age of YouTube and the internet seems to be, well, you nitpick and you look at all the stuff that you think sucks, and you like being a critic just talks about being a critic means you just talk about how everything sucks or how much you hate something. I don't think that is what criticism is for. I don't think that's wherein the value of criticism lies. I'm not, and I don't practice that kind of criticism, and I'm not interested in engaging with it or watching it. And I think it just makes fandom miserable for everybody. I don't think everybody needs to be a Pollyanna. I don't think everybody needs to be positive all the time and love everything. That's not what being critical is either. But it doesn't mean that you hate everything. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying something. And if you are a hater, if you are a Star Trek hater, all right, let's just use Star Trek as the example, since you mentioned it in your question. You're a Star Trek hater. You hate Star Trek, or you hate the new Star Trek, whatever. You hate some facet of Star Trek. And all you fucking do is talk about how much you hate it. What are you doing with your life? What are you trying to accomplish? You're not doing political activism. You're not going to change the world. If there's some kind of injustice in the world and you talk about how much you hate that because you want to open people's eyes and try to get them to change it, that's great. But if you're talking about how much you hate a fucking TV show, you're not going to change the world. You're not doing anything important. You're not doing anything consequential. You're just shitting on something that other people like. And you're making it more difficult for them to like it, because you're creating a toxic fandom, which makes it more difficult for them to meet and engage with other fans of the thing they like. And you're sure as hell not getting anything out of it. All you're doing is complaining about it and talking about how much you hate it. Why would you spend so much time thinking about and talking about and engaging with something that you fucking hate? Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. So no, I guess that's my answer. That's my answer in a nutshell. What do I think of the haters? I just don't get it. I get not liking stuff. I don't get making not liking stuff so central to your identity. Davlin Gatesphere says the Federation is basically dead. Starfleet is gone for the most part, and the MC stole the Enterprise G1X. Okay, I guess we're 2,000 years ahead, so, you know, to save a failing revolution with the last bastion of humanity looking for a new home. That sounds interesting. That sounds like a premise with some potential for sure. Some Random Geek says, question, can I be critical of Joe Biden and still vote for him? Yes, of course. Of course. Absolutely. And you should be. I think you should do both things. I think you should be critical of Joe Biden, and I think you should vote for him. Yes, absolutely. And Bruce, I know you've been posting a couple of things that I haven't mentioned, but I've caught a glance at it. You're sort of responding to the question that you asked. You say talking about sci-fi fiction in specific keeps us at a distance, removes bias. People fall off their chair when series are reshot with gender. Yeah, it doesn't remove bias completely. That's a fair point. It doesn't remove bias completely. But I think the separation does allow some more room. And then you also say plus which Star Trek is famously a discussion of wherever politics was going at the time. USSR versus USA, the black-white kiss. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It does. I mean, yeah, it's not like, hopefully most people can tell like what Star Trek is going on about, right? It's not a complete mystery, you know, but because you're not literally talking about events from history, it can create a little bit of separation. Lovacat17 says, everyone is saying that Trump is backed by Russia and looking at Trump's success. If the whole Russia thing is true, we should be winning. Why am I not feeling the winning thing? Because there are... Because the people in Russia who are in charge are backing Donald Trump. Obviously, their judgment is not the best. Fernanda says, thank you. It was creeping on my soul for so long, especially with lower decks around. I had to take the haters thing out of my head. Thank you for understanding me. Well, thank you for understanding me. We feel the same way. Seth Jones, have you seen the Settle for Biden campaign? I don't think I have. And Queer Pro Black says, heads up, Russia actively trying to sabotage Biden campaign. Yes, it does appear that Russia, or that not, I have to be careful because it's not like Russia, like the entire country, but people within Russia, people who are acting in the interest of the Russian government, appear to be trying to interfere in the election again in Trump's favor. Yeah, absolutely. It does. That seems to be the case. One-Eyed Monkey 9000 says, could the U.S. change the voting system so you number candidates and voting is compulsory like Australia? Could. Probably won't. Sorry, Vovacat. Let me... No, I just read it. Sorry, I don't mean to ignore you. I apologize. As I keep saying, like, it's not intentional if I miss your question. 255 AD says, what if it's part of your religion that a spiritual remedy works? Are you saying you should be forced to admit it doesn't before you can sell it in a store? Boy, you're really just putting the screws to me, aren't you? I don't think it's ethical to allow people to claim that they are selling you a service that they are not selling you. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. Like, if it is part of your religion to say that a spiritual remedy works and the spiritual remedy doesn't work, I don't think you should be allowed to say that it works. Like, I don't know how to get around that ethically. Like, I don't know how that makes it any more right. You know? Some Random Geek says, if we get rid of capitalism, there will be a lot less snake oil salesmen or palm reading and tarot cards or astrology. So shouldn't we get rid of capitalism? I think that would help, but honestly, I mean... there would still, that would take away the economic exploitation part of it. Like if there was no economic exploitation at all, then yes, that would take care of the problem of like unscrupulous, phony psychics or whoever, taking advantage of people financially. That would take care of that problem. But I think you would still have the potential there for people to be deceived. And that's a problem too. Queer Pro Black says, real world Trek question. Which Star Trek actors do you like as real people? LeVar Burton is such a good person. Kate Mulgrew, Brent Spiner, Jonathan Frakes, Marina are good allies. Shatner isn't. I agree with that 100%. Actually, a lot of Trek actors are really good people. Unfortunately, I don't think we can count Shatner among them. But yeah, LeVar Burton is fantastic. LeVar Burton is a great guy and is willing to talk politics, is willing to call bullshit on, when something happens. He's LeVar Burton is great. Marina Sirtis is great. Brent Spine. Yeah, all the ones you mentioned. Frakes. Obviously, I love Jonathan Frakes. I think he's a great guy. Robert Duncan McNeil is a good guy. Most of the major cast members seem to be really good people. Not everybody, of course, but most of the major cast members seem to be really good people. And that's so nice. Like, that's so nice to know. Super chat from Crudbutts. Thank you. Says cheers. Thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate it. And then there was another one that I missed, another super chat from John Burns that says, Apple TV is going to stream Isaac Asimov's The Foundation series. Response, are you excited? Or who's Isaac? I know who Isaac Asimov is. I don't have Apple TV, and I don't plan to get it anytime soon, so I'm probably not going to see it. So I guess my response is, I hope it's good. I'm not going to see it. Yes, Siamak, Jerry Ryan, absolutely. Jerry Ryan is great, too. Jerry Ryan is fantastic. Every time I see a Star Trek actor, retweeting, anti-Trump stuff, I'm just like, yeah. Siamak says the money exchange is the issue, not the belief or claim of belief. I think that the money exchange is the big issue. The money exchange is why I would say I wonder if it should be. I think it should be illegal because it's exploitation. It's taking material advantage of somebody. But even if that were not the case, I would still have a problem if somebody representing something that is false is true. If you're doing it in the context of a religious belief and you're saying like this is part of our culture and we get something out of the ritual or we get something out of practicing this and having a connection to our culture and to our history, I understand that, but I don't know if I'm ever going to be okay with even if you take the economic exploitation out of it. I don't know if I'm ever going to be okay with the idea that you can promise to provide a service that you cannot provide. I'm just not okay with that. Another super chat from John Burns. Doesn't ranked voting work when you have more than two political parties? When there's really only two choices, ranked voting seems just silly. My first choice, Biden. Second choice, Biden. Yeah, if you're right. I mean, but the ranked choice voting would work because take the presidential race. Yes, the presidential race, because we have a predominantly two-party system, almost always comes down to only two viable options. So ranked choice voting doesn't really come into play there. But think about the primaries. Even if we maintain a two-party system, those two parties have primaries that lately have had clown cars full of candidates. And would it not be better to do ranked choice voting for those elections so that the candidates who win those elections, it's not just a first past the post, the guy, there's 10 people running and the guy who gets 12% wins. You know what I mean? Like it's a proper, like you have to get a majority of votes in order to, I still think, even within the context of the two-party system, maybe not the general election, but the primary elections, that ranked choice voting could be of some use and would be an improvement. Oh, another super chat from Corey Hankanen. Steve, my state has done better than some RE COVID, but school announced intent to reopen full time. I have two young kids. Am deeply concerned. Advise? I mean, I have people who are extremely dear to me who are teachers who are facing the prospect of going back, who are in districts where the schools are going to reopen, and I'm worried sick about them. And I wish it was I wish I could just say, well, just don't go. Like, just quit. Get another job. Don't go to work. But economically, that's not realistic. So I don't know what it feels like to have kids and to face the prospect of having to send my kids to school. I'm sure that's a whole different level. But I mean, there are people that I love who are going to be in danger that I am really super worried about. So advise, like, I don't know. I mean, keep them as safe as possible. If it's not feasible to keep them out of school, send them to school and make sure they know damn well to wear their masks, to wash their hands, to keep 6 feet apart. Like, make sure that they do their part to stay safe and stay responsible. Like, it's a shitty situation that people should not be in. Like, we should not be doing this. We should not be opening schools at this time. It's ridiculous. But if you're in that situation where they have to go to school, it's shitty advice, but the best I can say is make damn sure that they're as safe as they possibly can be. 255 AD, is there really anything wrong with Michael's mother, or does he just hate her because he's a hateful person? It's closer to the second one. I think Michael and his mother just have a really, really bad relationship, at least from Michael's side. It's not necessarily that she's like the worst person in the world. I think it's just that he just doesn't get along with her, and he goes overboard with that. Like, he goes overboard with a lot of stuff. Caroline Clark says, maybe William Shatner got spooked, afraid of difference when they made him and James Spader lovers on Boston Legal. I don't know. I don't know what... I think Shatner's deal is that he's just old and rich and out of touch and resistant to change. I don't know if it's any more complicated than that. He's become an extremely successful guy. He's in his upper 80s, I think, or is he 90 now? He's either in his extreme 80s or he might be 90 now. And he's done very well for himself, and he's extremely beloved by a lot of people, and he just doesn't see the need to change. And he's out of touch with a lot of things, and that's That's just who he is. And that's not an excuse, because I think he's an asshole. But, I think that's about as deep as we need to get with our analysis. you know? Um, um, oh, Robert Mills, thank you. You like the new Ensign's Log. The new Ensign's Log is one of my favorite episodes we've done so far. And I know I say that a lot, but I really, really liked our episode this week. Super chat from John Burns. Other countries have multi-party elections, but I think the problem is with the mindset of those in the U.S. We have one side or the other. Also, minority governments mean no hidden deals, openness. Yeah, I agree with all that. And I think one of the major obstacles is the American mindset. We are just so used to the first past the post system where it's like you vote for this person or you vote for that person and it's a binary choice and that's it. Like we have convinced ourselves that that's the way it has to be and we're resistant to doing it any other way. I think that's a big part of it. 255 AD says, will it be okay to go back to calling Biden a shit after he wins? I said I was worried libs might say we're just never, ever able to insult him for fear of the GOP. We're going to have to be critical of Biden if he wins. I think that'll be necessary because, look, the guy, even if we put aside the Tara Reid allegations and we just look at him as a politician, the guy has shortcomings that we are going to need to be aware of and we are going to need to continually push him to do better at. So yes, we will have to be critical of Biden. And being critical doesn't just mean saying, oh, fuck Biden, Biden sucks. If he's the president and we need him to get shit done, we're going to have to be critical, but in a constructive way. But yeah, I don't think just saying, oh, don't say anything bad about Biden, don't criticize Biden. We have to criticize him. We have to criticize him. We have to be able to push him where we need him to go. Yeah, and John Burns says Shatner is in his mid-80s, but I think Caroline was right earlier when Caroline said that he's 89. I think that's correct. Yeah, and Fernandez. Meanwhile, Patrick Stewart is reading Shakespeare on Instagram. Yes, still. He meant that shit. He was like, no, I'm doing a sonnet a day until this is over. You think I'm fucking around. He's doing it. John Brockman says, but what if fuck Biden, Biden sucks? That's your decision, my friend. Caroline Clark says, we should be just as critical of Biden as we are of Trump. However, Biden needs to win. America will be sunk with another 4 years of our dear leader. I agree with that 100%. I could not have said it any better myself. Queer Pro Black says, channels like Vosh, Thought Slime, Sean, Damage Report, Mexi, Innuendo Studios are very good channels to combat racist bigotry on the far right, like Candace Owens, David Duke, and Shapiro. Yeah, I like Mexi. I like Innuendo Studios. I like Sean. I don't know if I've seen Damage Report. I don't know if I've seen that much Thought Slime either. I haven't seen that much Vosh either, but there's something I'm not super. I don't know. He would not be on my list of people to recommend. But Innuendo Studios especially, I think, is fantastic. And Mexi too. Mexi is good too. But Innuendo Studios, I'm probably most familiar with of the actual work, and I think fantastic. Yeah, John Burns. Jimmy Carter's still building houses. Yeah, exactly. Best ex-president ever. 255 AD says, what is Michael going to be like as a secret police leader? Will he fuck it up? Probably. I don't want to give anything away, but probably he'll fuck it up. Yeah, that's what Michael Worley does. He fucks things up. Pedro Noguera says, would you ever consider making a video about the intersections of Star Trek and the horror genre? I believe there are lots of things to be said in this regard. Yeah, that's a great idea. Maybe I need to think about some example episodes that I could use as a basis for a video, But yeah, I would love to do that. That sounds like a great idea, the intersection of Star Trek and horror. The intersection of Star Trek and other genres is a great sort of a vein that I haven't really mined yet. So absolutely. Davlin Gatesford, have you seen Jesse Dollamore? Yes, I know Jesse. I've seen his. I like Jesse Dollamore a lot. Crudbutt says, my husband vowed to move back to Canada if Biden loses. Oh, I wish I could. I wish I could go with your husband. I wish I could go. Oh my God. Or like New Zealand or someplace. Yeah, and Bruce Bartup says, yeah, you will have to call Biden to account. Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely. Yes, Chris H. Exactly. Yeah, that episode, One Moon Circles, Eyes in the Dark. Genesis, which is a shitty episode, but is totally a horror movie. I mean, that's just TNG. Yeah, there have been many episodes of Star Trek that have drawn from the horror genre. Even elements of Star Trek First Contact. You know, there are scenes in that are straight out of a horror movie for sure. Caroline Clark says, what is BFD short for? I thought Worley called it VFD. No, it's BFD. And within, and technically, with everybody knows what BFD really stands for, but within the fiction of the show, Worley's BFD stands for Bachelor of Fine Divinities. That is his degree. He has a BFD, a Bachelor of Fine Divinities, from the University of St. Veritas, which is the official university of the One True Church. The Salt Monster. Yeah, Pedro Noguera says, the Salt Monster. Yes, absolutely. Death Star says, are you looking forward to the New Mutants? I'm not really. No, not really. I mean, like, if it gets really good reviews and it sounds good, I'll watch it. I'm not like anti New Mutants, but I'm not like super excited about it. But I'll watch it when it comes out. Sure, probably. Another super chat from John Burns. Doesn't Jimmy Carter building houses prove that if you keep working, it can extend your lifespan? His brother didn't build houses like Jimmy, and he died 3 decades ago. Wait after COVID to move north. Yes, good advice. Good advice. Yeah, I mean, the work, devoting his life to service and building houses for the homeless, it certainly doesn't seem to have harmed Jimmy Carter at all. Some Random Geek says, since we should call out ableism, shouldn't we just end capitalism since capitalism is inherently ableist? Can we just end capitalism already? You sound like you're getting fussy about it. Yes, Frame of Mind. Chris H., Frame of Mind. Great episode. And a great example of like a horror episode for sure. Radical Bacon. No, I did not watch the Dragon Capsule Land. No, I missed like all of that. I was doing other stuff. Matthew Datcher, how much education does one need to be a priest in the OTC? Does a bachelor's mean anything? I haven't really nailed down what the educational requirements are. I would imagine you would have to attend divinity school and get some kind of degree, but I haven't nailed down exactly what the requirements are. I just know that Michael is not a priest. Robert Mills, why didn't Michael Worley join the clergy? I've never really explored that, but I think my general impression is that he didn't want to. Like, his dream was to be a broadcaster. He didn't want to be a priest. He wanted to be a broadcaster, and he had hoped that he would get a job at the church's TV station or the church's radio station, and that would be his way of officially serving the church, but he didn't do that, so he started the Whirlpool as his own way of doing it, sort of independently. I don't think he really wanted to be a priest. I think because a priest is a service job. And Michael didn't want to be a servant. Michael wanted to be the center of attention. Michael wanted to be the host. Michael wanted to be the guy on TV. Yes, Fernando, Frame of Mind. What a great episode, right? NCMOC. It's such a great episode. Radical Bacon. Can I love SpaceX and hate Musk? Yeah, why not? Of course you can. You can love Harry Potter and hate J.K. Rowling. And you should. All right, I'm going to call this to an end. We've been going for 2.5 hours, and there is a play currently live streaming that I would like to watch before it's completely over. So yeah, I am going to call this to a close. So thank you all so much for all the questions. I want to remind everybody, first of all, don't forget the charity links in the description of the video. Check out the document, the Google Doc that our friend Some Random Geek has very kindly compiled with some links to fundraisers and PayPal links and such of friends of ours who need a little helping hand. That is in the description. Also, the fundraising link to help out Black Lives Matter DC, which is still ongoing, and I still encourage you to donate to that. Also, don't forget, if you want to help me out, you can become a member of my Patreon page at patreon.com/Steve Shives. Becoming a patron at any dollar amount per month gives you the ability to ask questions for this show ahead of time. I answer patron questions first before turning to the live chat. That's just one of the benefits. I just got another super chat from John Burns, who says, in your Does Star Trek Glorify Terrorism video, I was surprised you never mentioned anything from TOS the Cloudminders, as Kirk does engage in terroristic acts. Ciao. Good catch. Maybe I'll try to mention that in one of the follow-up videos or in the comment response video, but good catch. And also, don't forget, in addition to the Patreon page, in addition to the YouTube thing, I co-host podcasts with the great Jason Harding, a.k.a. Jason with a D. And you can listen to our podcasts at letmelistenpodcast.com or on SoundCloud, or subscribe via RSS using your favorite podcast app. I co-host, along with Jason, the Late Seating Podcast, which is a movie review show, and also the Ensign's Log, which is a Star Trek-themed comedy podcast. We love both shows. I'm so happy that a lot of you do listen to them and enjoy them. New episode of the Ensign's Log just went up today. It's a good one, so I encourage you to check out the podcasts, check out Late Seating and the Ensign's Log. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all for sticking with me, all of you, for this long-ass stream. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the support. I will see you in 2 weeks for another one of these, and I'll see you in between now and then for a bunch of other videos and stuff. My output is going to be a little not as frequent for the next month or so, because I am going to take a little bit of time off. Oh, super chat from Stephen Clear. Thank you very much, my friend. I'm going to take a little bit of time off from doing videos for the next month to kind of just give myself a little bit of a break, but I'm still going to be doing stuff. So you're going to see me every now and then, and I'm still going to do live streams and stuff. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there. Thank you all so much for watching and for being with me, and have a good weekend, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.